Thank you. And I was reminded before the break that I should have asked Betsy, Ms. Matheson, who is online virtually, do you have any questions that you would like to ask of Mr. Godina?
Thank you, Rosanna. My questions have been answered.
Wonderful, thank you. Now we do have an extra question here on from one of the board members, Mr. Hartley. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mentioned that I had a couple of concerns earlier, and I had a line of questions for one and forgot the other. The other is this. I may be the only one here, but I think I might be speaking for others on the board. I want to give you just another opportunity to explain to us why you haven't taken those other courses. I'm just not satisfied yet as to why you didn't do it. I wish you had. I think it would, looking to the future, I think it would make our job a lot easier if you had. Do you have any other thoughts on the matter that you can share with us? And if you don't, that's okay. I just wanted to give you another opportunity.
Sure, and I appreciate it. Yes, I agree. Hindsight, I maybe should have done that subsequent to the revocation as a good faith effort. But there were a lot of things, not only in my professional life, but in my personal life that were going on too, that I don't want to completely divulge here, but there were things going on with my personal life at that time too that just took a lot of time to attend to. You know, again, it came down to a time factor, both personally and professionally. I know it's, you know, what's more important. You know, that's a tough question to answer. At the time, it appeared that I had some, mostly the personal issues, and some of these were health issues with family members, things of that nature that just completely took my time, and you know, in some cases, the wind out of my sails at that point. You know, once I got the revocation, you know, all the wind went out of my sails at that point. You know, it was obviously a big letdown for me, big letdown for the people around me. So, to be honest, that, you know, that was a factor also that came in too. And I think, as one of the board members mentioned, you know, this thing's been going on for quite some time. And believe me, you know, I've lived every minute of it, even after the fact. And yeah, it's definitely a head scratcher for me too. You know, how could this happen, or how could these things have happened? I can only, let's say, control what's, you know, in front of me, and you know, I can't do anything about what was in the past, what is past. I can only guarantee, or do my best to guarantee to the board that this is, you know, this isn't going to ever happen again. I will not let it happen again. You know, it just, you know, tears into my soul every time something like this has happened, and I don't know how much more there's left. So that's all I can say about that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, so if there are no other questions from the board, Your Honor, I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you. We'll go back to Petitioner's Counsel for redirect.
Thank you. Just want to make clear, Mr. Godina, that every project that you've done since the revocation has been done under the responsible charge of Mr. John Thompson. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yes.
And when you currently have a business card?
Yes, I do.
And does it have a PE next to it?
No.
And when you sign documents, do you put a PE next to your name?
No, I do not.
Okay, and you haven't done that at all since the revocation, is that correct?
That's correct. It's even been taken out of my resume that we prepare proposals for. The PE has been removed from that, and among just about every document I can think of.
Okay, and so since the time of the revocation, you have not held yourself out as holding a professional engineering license for the state of California, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And when you're billed for, the work that you do for IMEG, are you billed out as a civil engineer?
No, I'm not.
Okay, and you're billed out as
As a project engineer.
Thank you.
Or I'm sorry, a project executive.
Forgive me. I missed that calculation, that too, that change. So just to be clear, you have not been billed as a project engineer since the date of revocation with your work at IMEG, correct?
That's correct, yes.
And you haven't stamped any plans since the date of your revocation, is that correct?
Absolutely not, no.
And any project that did require a stamp, you provided the sufficient information that Mr. Thompson felt that he could then stamp those plans. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
All right, I don't have any other further questions.
Thank you. So we have finished with the petitioner's testimony. Would petitioner's counsel like to call their next witness?
Yes, we're going to call Mr. John Thompson.
Your Honor, if I may, I had one question.
Oh, okay, I apologize.
I apologize.
An additional question from the Deputy Attorney General.
Mr. Godina, you just mentioned that your civil engineering license number is not on proposals, but you also answered questions that you are the signatory on proposals for IMEG. Whose license number is on the proposals that you sign?
Typically, we don't have a license number on our proposals unless it's prepared by a licensed engineer. So in my case, there wouldn't be a license number on that proposal. We have subsequently, especially in the proposals that we send out to the city, those are all, even though I helped prepare most of them, John actually signs those, and under his license number is on those proposals. But in the proposals I send out, there isn't a license number on those.
So those proposals would be for what other type of entities?
Well, in some cases, they involve multiple disciplines. We submit proposals that include mechanical, electrical, plumbing, structural, engineering, and in those cases, those are signed by those department heads or department people in those disciplines.
I asked an unclear question. You just clarified that if you send a proposal to a city or any other government agency, would you then make certain that Mr. Thompson's license was on that proposal?
Yes.
Okay. For any entities where you're the signatory on the proposal, there is no license number?
There isn't on anything I would sign, no.
Thank you.
So I'll go back to petitioner's counsel if you, since we've done recross, need any more redirect.
No, we don't need to redirect on that.
Okay, so we have finished with petitioners.
Your Honor, can I ask a very, very quick question?
Okay.
Godina, what is your current title?
My current title is project executive.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so we will move on to the next witness. So I don't know if you need an additional chair or set up as you will.
Thank you. Your Honor, we'd like to call John Thompson.
Good morning, Mr. Thompson. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will provide in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury?
I do.
Thank you. You may lower your hand. Please state and spell your name for the record.
Yes, my name is John Mark Thompson, JohnMarkThompson.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. You may question your witness.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Thompson. You understand that we're here today for the hearing of Mr. Godina's petition for reinstatement?
Yes.
Are you familiar with Mr. Godina?
Yes, I am.
And how, what is your understanding of, or what's your relationship with Mr. Godina?
Mr. Godina works for me for IMEG. I've worked with him for almost 7 years. I've been with IMEG since about February of 16. I think he started in March or April of 16. Sorry.
Thank you. And what's your understanding of your involvement in today's proceedings?
Yeah, I think I'm here to talk to Richard's day-to-day actions at IMEG and other questions that come my way.
Okay. Is it correct that you prepared a declaration or signed a declaration in support of Richard's petition?
Yes, it is.
Do you recall doing that?
Yes, I do.
In that declaration, we did talk about your background and credentials. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Just for the benefit of the board today, I do want to ask you some general background questions. If you'd start by letting us know when you first obtained your civil engineer license.
I was first licensed in California in 2014, license number Civil C82557. I was previously licensed in Arizona prior to that, couple months.
Thank you. Are you currently licensed in any other jurisdictions?
Yes, California, Arizona, Nevada, Washington, Oregon, Alabama is the 6th.
And can you briefly describe your professional qualifications?
Yeah, I've been working in civil engineering since 99, 2000, somewhere back in there. Got my bachelor's in civil engineering from Cal State Los Angeles. Been working, like I said, with IMEG approximately 7 years. Prior to that, I was with Wheeler and Gray in Pasadena, California, again, doing civil engineering. Prior to that, a couple other companies, 6 or 7 different companies, which I think the board knows.
Thank you. And will you please restate your current position with IMEG?
Yes, my current position is a client executive with IMEG.
And how long have you been in that specific role?
Approximately 3.5 years.
And as a client executive, what are your job duties?
Everything. Anything from business development to day-to-day interactions with staff. I currently have, I think, 30 staff members in California and Arizona, 4 different offices, Pasadena, Ontario, Anaheim, and then now Scottsdale, Arizona. Anything from interaction with clients, business development, getting clients, doing proposals, as Richard mentioned, physically working on projects, whether it's the proposals or reviewing reports or design documents, stuff like that.
Okay. Thank you. And when did Mr. Godina, if you recall, come to work for IMEG?
I believe it was March or April of 2016.
And was that when you were first introduced to him?
That's correct.
And what position or role did he have when he came to IMEG in 2016?
I don't recall his title. He would have been a project manager at the time.
And did you, at that time, interact with Mr. Godina directly?
Yeah, when Richard started, he was in the Ontario office, as was I, and then we worked together on projects there. I think he went to Pasadena after that, and then he went to Anaheim following that, and that's where he's currently working out of.
And when you would work together on projects, can you explain the interactions?
Yeah, in the beginning, my role was more of a project manager, so I was working on same projects with him or other projects. After, I would say that was probably the first 2 or 3 years, that type of interaction. I became Richard's boss 3.5 years ago when I took the client executive role. And
as a project manager, what would your dealings with Mr. Godino look like for a given project? In other words, how often would you guys interact? Would you speak?
Daily, talking about projects, absolutely, yeah. When he was in the Ontario office. Now we currently talk, I would say, 2 hours a day.
And what are, presently, what are those conversations entail?
Either relating to proposals or relating to projects. One of them that he mentioned was Queen of the Valley. Another one is in the city of Duarte that he said was a confidential client. It's a healthcare facility that we've been doing there for about 3.5, 4 years. So projects like that. Currently, they're in construction on the utilities for that one, and I think they're actually closing up, so they should be done in the next 3 or 4 months. So that kind of stuff.
Okay. Are you aware that Mr. Godina's license was revoked effective January 14th, 2021? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Mr. Godina testified today that he is authorized to sign IMEG proposals up to a certain amount. Were you present in the room for that testimony?
Yes, I was.
And is that is that accurate, or is that your understanding?
Yes, so we have a few different ways that we do proposals, anywhere from a project that's under $10,000 as a simple form. It's 1 to 2 pages. Get into our larger projects, like the confidential plan I just said. I think that proposal was about $4.5 million for the civil and survey scope. IMEG in total was probably about $9 million. So that was actually signed by a vice president of the company, not by Richard or myself.
I see. At IMEG, do you need is a license required to sign a proposal?
No, there's no requirement for a licensor.
For any proposal that's been signed by Mr. Godina since January 2021, does it indicate anywhere that he's an engineer?
No.
Does he in any way hold himself, since January 2021, does he hold himself out as an engineer at IMEG?
Not a licensed civil engineer, no.
Thank you. Mr. Godina's position or job title is project executive, is that right?
That's correct.
Is that at IMEG, is that a license, does that position require a license?
No, neither is mine.
Okay. Is it safe to say IMEG is a multidisciplinary firm?
Yeah, we basically have, I want to say every discipline besides architecture. We've got civil, I have civil and survey under me. We've got in mechanical, electrical, plumbing, structural technology, security. We pretty much do it all, sorry.
And does IMEG have any policies or procedures to make sure that its employees are not practicing outside of their practice area? With licensed employees practicing outside of their area?
I would say that yes, we do have both written and verbal. Yeah.
And what can you describe what I guess mechanisms are in place to make sure that someone's not performing licensed work without a license?
Well, I can say for Richard being directly under me, I mean, every communication that I see, I understand that he's not putting PE on there, and he's never calling himself a licensed civil engineer or anything else. As an IMEG regulation, I think that it would probably be better answered by Pat Eikenberry, the VP.
Since January of 2021, have you ever observed any unethical conduct by Mr. Godina?
I have not.
Has he ever failed to meet the engineering standards? Strike that. Has he ever failed to meet IMEG's principles and procedures for his position?
No.
Has there ever, since January 2021, has there been any issue with Mr. Godina's work product?
None.
Has there been any conduct whatsoever which, in your opinion, would cause you to believe that any actual or potential harm would result from reinstatement of Mr. Godina's license?
No.
Mr. Thompson, how, if at all, has Richard's revoked license status hindered his ability to perform his job duties?
I would say, as someone who is also licensed, I just have to say, having that PE being removed after everything that you've gone through has got to be a tough thing. But day-to-day interactions, it does. I do supervise all of his work more than I would say that I would have. if he was a licensed individual. However, as Richard said, everything that goes out of my team, civil CC01 is what I'm called, is signed by me in California. I do review everything, whether it's the reports or the documents, and I do have daily interaction with all the staff. So I guess regardless, I am still overseeing him, if it was or was not a licensed civil engineer.
One of the questions by the board members today was how would Richard's work for the company change if his license was reinstated? Can you provide your opinion on that?
He still wouldn't sign or seal. It's still going to be under me, but I think day-to-day interactions would be the same with the clients or myself. The only change would be that he would have that title on his business cards or his email signatures and such.
Thank you. I may have asked this already, but just to confirm, since January of 2021, has Richard performed any work that was required to have been performed by a license holder?
No. A licensed civil engineer? No.
Hey, thank you.
No.
Mr. Thompson, the question before the board today is whether Mr. Godina has been sufficiently rehabilitated to protect the public health and safety and welfare of the public, should his license be reinstated. Can you opine on that, or do you have any thoughts?
I think Richard's work quality and work ethic is outstanding in everything that he does, all the projects that he works on. Like he said, most of the projects he works on is for healthcare. Large facilities, Southern California, Northern California. So I have never seen anything in the almost 7 years that would take away from that.
Thank you. Mr. Thompson, in your opinion, do you believe that Mr. Godina has been rehabilitated?
Yes, I do.
And what is the basis of that opinion?
Just day-to-day interactions with him. My understanding of his level of work, his QA/QC on the projects that he works on, and other projects that we do for my team and other teams at IMEG.
Thank you. I have no further questions at this time.
Thank you. Would the Deputy Attorney General like to ask some questions?
Good afternoon, Mr. Thompson.
Hi.
Good morning. In 2006, when IMEG hired Mr. Godina, he was on probation, or his license status was on probation. Did you have that knowledge?
2016, I believe.
Yes.
I did not know that. I would not have been someone who hired him. I was not his direct supervisor at the time either.
When did you become his direct supervisor?
Approximately 3.5 years ago, when I became the client executive.
When you became the client executive 3.5 years ago, did you know then that his license was on a probationary status?
I believe so. I think I did, yes.
How did you learn that?
Probably the board's website. I'm on it probably 4 or 5 times a week, checking people if it's someone that I'm interviewing or someone that I meet in business. So I probably at one point in time prior to that, I would assume that I had searched that and had a discussion with Richard about what happened.
And did I hear your testimony correctly that if Mr. Godina's license was reinstated by this board, that IMEG would not give him signing and sealing privileges?
I guess the way that I run my team is that I oversee everything, all the projects that happen on the civil side. So I guess, yeah, there's a chance he could sign or seal something if he wanted to. We don't have a rule in IMEG that says that I have to be the signatory and take the responsible charge of that project. I just feel that I need to work 80 hours a week and do it because I love all these projects and these clients.
So on every single project for the last 3.5 years where you've worked with Mr. Godina, you have been the responsible charge?
That's correct.
Okay. And you mentioned you have offices, or you do work currently in Arizona.
Correct.
Are there 2 offices there?
There's currently, I believe there's only 1 office in Arizona currently, in Scottsdale. We had one in Phoenix and one in Tempe, and I believe we've consolidated to Scottsdale only.
And how much time currently do you physically spend in Arizona working on projects?
approximately 15, 20 days a year, maybe.
And even when you are working on those projects, do you still oversee Mr. Godina's work on a day-to-day basis?
Yes.
Would you say that's 2 hours a day?
I couldn't tell you. I could look, about, yeah, I could say that, yeah.
So the fact that Mr. Godina is not licensed currently and had his license revoked is a hindrance on your work as well. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
And would it be speculation if I said it was a hindrance on IMEG's work?
Objection, speculation.
I do think the way the question was asked, I'm going to sustain that objection.
I will pass. Shouldn't have asked it. Mr. Godina brings in a lot of profit for IMEG. Is that a fair statement?
A lot of profit, or he brings in a lot of work, I guess.
Object as to characterization of profit, the term.
I'll get a response from Ms. Flynn.
Do you understand what I mean by the word profit?
Yes.
Okay.
Are you able to answer that question?
I guess, yes. Can you restate it?
Mr. Godina testified that he brings in, or his goal is to bring in $1 million a year worth of work for IMEG. Do you agree with that testimony?
At least $1 million a year in revenue, I would assume, yes.
Okay. And that $1 million of revenue, would you say that that leads to profits for IMEG?
I'm just going to object that the profits of IBEC have no bearing whatsoever on this matter and may invade any work product or confidential business relations that they have with their clients. It has no bearing on this case.
Ms. Flynn, I am kind of not seeing the relevance yet. Are you going to get somewhere with this line of questioning?
I was just going towards bias with this witness's testimony, Your Honor.
I see. Okay, I'll allow it.
Okay.
Can you ask it one more time?
Is it a fair statement that Mr. Godina and his ability to bring in projects for IMEG brings in a lot of profits for IMEG?
I'll subject that's characterization of a lot to the extent that the witness has an understanding of what $1 million in potential revenue would generate, then I would advise that should be the characterization of the question and answer.
So I'm going to overrule the objection. The witness can answer to the extent he knows. A lot is a little vague, but let's just say if we take out the a lot from that question, I think we can re-ask it.
Mr. Thompson, is it fair to say that Mr. Godina's history of bringing in $1 million worth of projects to IMEG allows IMEG to make profits off of that work?
Yes.
I don't have any other questions.
Okay, so we will now go to the board. If any board members have questions, I'll turn to the president to check.
Do any of, Mr. Novak?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And first of all, apologies for being just very slightly late this morning. I apologize to the inconvenience of everybody here. I have a question about the proposals that would go out under Mr. Godina's signature. Does the proposal become the contract? In other words, if I receive a proposal, do I simply sign it and send it back? Or do I say, yes, this is acceptable, and that then leads to a separate document, which is a contract?
It depends. Sometimes they'll use an AIA contract, but yes, you can sign that contract that I have sent for a proposal, send it back. It has all the agreements in it.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else on the board? Mr. Hartley?
Does Mr. Godina sign contracts of any size of let me rephrase the question. Does Mr. Godina sign contracts of any amount? And if so, what are those amounts?
Yes, and I would think I need to defer to Pat Eikenberry, the VP, on the size. I think he can sign up to, I'm not sure, I don't recall. There is a size limit with the project exec title that he can sign up to. I want to say it's 500,000 maybe.
You've read the Professional Engineers Act over the years, I assume.
Yes.
Section 6749 is titled Written Contracts. Part A3 says the name, address, and license or certificate number of the professional engineer needs to be on the contract.
I believe I am always signing with Richard Godina on the contracts.
So he does not sign the contracts alone?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
I don't think so. No. Same with all of our land surveying projects. It's signed by the land surveyor and myself.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Any other, Mr. King?
Thanks for being here today. Appreciate it. I think that actually says a lot, that you're here and taking time off. So I'm sure you heard a lot of the discussion and the testimony earlier about Mr. Godina's probation requirements as a result of the various disciplinary actions that have been taken against his license. And you've heard in particular quite a bit of questioning and discussion about the educational requirements in particular as part of his probation, and you've heard testimony that he's only completed one of the 3 courses. When I was wondering, first, if you have any comment about that?
I don't.
Okay. Would you be supportive as an executive of the company in Mr. Godina completing those other 2 outstanding courses?
In the future?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. No other questions.
Okay. Any other questions from board members? Ms. Matheson, do you have any questions?
No, thank you. That covers it.
Okay. All right, so no more other questions?
Okay, so we'll return to the petitioner's counsel for redirect.
Just one. Mr. Thompson, if you did not believe that Mr. Godina was sufficiently rehabilitated to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the public, would you be here today?
I would not be here.
Thank you. No further questions.
So I'm going to go back to the Deputy Attorney General for recross.
Mr. Godina testified that there were time factors involved with him taking college courses in order to comply with his probation. And one of the reasons he gave was that IMEG took up a lot of his time. Did Mr. Godina ever approach you and let you know that he wanted to comply with his probation, and in order to do so, he needed to take college courses?
I believe so.
When?
I don't know.
Was it 2019?
Honestly, I don't know off the top of my head.
Did you ever make any accommodations on behalf of IMEG to give Mr. Godina time off so that he could take those college courses to be in compliance with his probation?
I believe he took some time off for one of them at least, yeah.
Did he ask
The
you?
one that he did, I guess.
Okay, and that was in the fall of 2020. Do you recall that?
I recall you guys stating that earlier, yes. Someone stating that.
Okay. But as you sit here today, you do not have an independent recollection of when Mr. Godina came up to you and said, I need to take college courses.
I cannot, no. I do not know the date that occurred, no.
Okay, thank you.
So does petitioner's counsel have any additional redirect?
No, thank you.
Thank you. The witness may be excused.
Thank you.
Petitioner's counsel would like to call their next witness.
Thank you. Well, petitioner calls Patrick Eikenberry. Hello, everybody.
Good morning, Mr. Eikenberry. Before you testify, I need to swear you in. Can you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will provide in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury?
I do.
Thank you. Please state and spell your full name for the record.
It's Patrick David Eikenberry, PatrickDavid It's pretty much the whole alphabet, I think. I just had to stop and think.
Thank you. Petitioner's counsel may question their witness.
Thank you. Mr. Eikenberry, welcome. You've been present for today's proceedings in the room with us, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And you understand that we're here for the petition for reinstatement of Mr. Godina's license, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What's your current employment and job title?
Executive Vice President, Civil Engineering.
And what company do you work for?
IMEG Corporation.
And how long have you been in that position?
Well, are you asking how much experience do I have, or how long have I been with IMEG Corporation?
Not yet. We'll get to that.
I own my own firm, and we joined and merged with IMEG in, I believe it was May of 2017.
Okay. Where are you currently based?
Quad Cities.
Where is that?
That would be Moline, Rock Island, Bettendorf, and Davenport. Moline, Rock Island, Illinois, Bettendorf, Davenport, Iowa. We join a river.
And did you travel from to be here at the proceedings today?
I did.
Is it safe to say that your presence at today's proceeding signifies the importance of the purpose of today's hearing?
Absolutely.
Well, we thank you for being here. What's your understanding of your involvement as a witness today?
My knowledge of Richard's work and the value he adds.
Okay. Mr. Eikenberry, are you a licensed civil engineer?
Yes, sir, I am.
And when did you first obtain your license?
I knew you were going to ask that question. I believe it was September 1995, state of Wisconsin.
Okay. Are you licensed in any other jurisdictions?
No, sir, I'm not.
And can you, as best you can, briefly describe your professional qualifications?
Is now my experience. So 38 years, a little over 38 years in the business. I grew up in the field doing surveys, a lot of earthwork, great drainage, just a lot of calculations. Worked my way up the company. I went to school at Blackhawk College, an associate's degree in applied sciences, and then after 12 years of experience at Missman, doing a multitude of duties, lots of calculations, lots of plan work, I qualified to take my professional engineer's exam and passed it. Then from there, I became a resident engineer out in the field, working on large projects, multi-million-dollar airfields, road projects, did a lot of municipal engineering, and then I opened an office for our firm in 1996 and in Bettendorf, Iowa, and grew that, became vice president of the company. I think in 2009, I became president of the company. In 2010, I became president and CEO.
And how long did you serve in the position of president and CEO?
Until I joined IMEG, so it would have been 7 years.
So approximately 2017?
Oh, yes, sir. We'd grown the company at that point from roughly 55, 60 employees to 100.
And when you merged or joined with IMEG, you came over as vice president, is that correct?
No, I came over, that is true. I came over as a vice president, but I was also, we were in transition here in California, and I was overseeing this team. I was in California about once every 2 weeks for 18 months. We'd gone through a transition, and that's when I had brought John Thompson up in the ranks and made him CE. So I had worked with John and Richard during that time frame.
Okay. And when did you accept the position of Executive Vice President? What year?
I believe that was 2019. I'm also on the board of directors.
Okay, and as EVP, what are your job duties?
You know, I oversee the growth and do some of the acquisition work for our firm. I'm responsible for all 15 of our civil engineering teams. There's about 446 people that they're not direct reports to me. The way we're set up is we're team-based. As John explained, he's CCO1, so we have CCO1 through CC15. The client executive is, they run the team how they see fit, and I oversee that and determine whether I agree based on how things are going. So I travel quite a bit.
Does Mr. Thompson report directly to you?
Yes, sir, he does.
Mr. Eikenberry, when were you first introduced to Mr. Godina?
Would have been the spring or summer of 2017 when I started making regular trips here.
And what were the circumstances of that introduction?
Well, we had some leadership leave the firm via retirement, and I didn't have a replacement, so I took over that team temporarily, 18 months, to call it temporary. And I was meeting with all of the leadership out here in California, and Richard was the leadership in Anaheim, so I had frequent discussions with him.
And what was your understanding of the work that Richard was doing at that time?
Quite frankly, I didn't supervise any of Richard's work. I know that we were working on some larger projects at the time, but I did not supervise, you know, his day-to-day activity.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Eikenberry, you're aware that Mr. Godina's license was revoked and effective January 2021, is that correct?
I was. I'm aware of that. He called me.
And what did, when you say he called you, what can you describe that?
He just called me out of the blue, said he needed to talk about something, explained to me what, I don't know the history, explained to me that his license had been revoked, and he was working towards getting that rectified, and I really think he called me to see if we were going to let him go at the time.
Mm-hmm. What was IMEG's position with respect to Mr. Godina's license status being revoked in regards to his employment at IMEG?
You know, we had to make sure that we backfilled some of that responsibility. People have asked, how did the jobs change? Well, in my mind, everything's getting done twice now, because it has to be reviewed. I mean, Richard mentors, he's sort of the father figure in Anaheim, and he mentors some of that staff and makes sure that the duties and tasks to complete a job properly is done. But then John Thompson has to go back through and review it to the level of understanding that he's comfortable with the work that Richard has done. And I knew they communicated with one another, but it's extremely redundant. And, you know, John chooses to run his team. I have no qualms about how John runs his team, but John takes it very seriously. So he likes to, you know, regardless, John's going to review and sign, seal, and do those things. That's the way he works.
Mm-hmm. And what is your understanding of how Mr. Godina's role changed with the company after his license was revoked?
Well, I think he obviously didn't have as much freedom as he had before. You know, we have to be careful, as people have pointed out. He's no longer a professional engineer. He's got an immediate supervisor that scrutinizes quite a bit of what he does. There's got to be a trust built back up, you know, between the two of them. So his responsibilities changed quite a bit.
Mr. Godina testified today, as did Mr. Thompson, with respect to Mr. Godina's ability to execute proposals on behalf of IMEG. Are you present? Were you present for that testimony?
Yes, I was.
What is your position with respect to whether or not Mr. Godina's authorized to sign proposals on behalf of IMEG?
A client executive, a project executive does have authorization. I believe John was right, up to $500,000 for a proposal. My opinion is, though, the proposals, there's two steps to most jobs, and that is you submit qualifications, you get selected to come and interview, and then later comes a contract. Generally, I know I sign a lot of contracts. I know John signs a lot of contracts. The contracts they were referring to, I'm going to assume, was, you know, sometimes we do small work for clients, whether it's $5,000 to come find a pin in your yard or a boundary dispute, or $10,000. We call those simple contracts. But major contracts are usually signed by an officer of the company.
Okay. Mr. Godin is a project executive, is that correct?
That is correct.
What other job duties can he perform with that? Well, strike that. As a project executive, Mr. Thompson testified that does not require a license. Is that correct?
That is correct.
What other roles does a project executive have at the company?
So I heard people talk about project management versus supervisory roles. I sort of split them apart. If you're managing a project, you're managing staff, you're managing, are the tasks, did we fulfill all the obligations of the contracts? Are we meeting deadlines? Do we have the right expertise on the job? I call that project management. Some of the supervisory roles that were being discussed is really administrative. It's hiring and firing. It's approving timesheets. It's making sure people have billed their time correctly. It may be preparing proposals, or at least preparing, you know, they referred to the marketing staff as helping out preparing proposals. Well, obviously, the marketing staff can't write a good scope of service for a proposal. So they do prepare proposals on a regular basis, because the people that make it pretty aren't the ones that have the knowledge of how to do the work.
Thank you. I asked Mr. Thompson this, I'll ask you as well, but does IMEG have any policies and procedures in place to make sure unlicensed employees are not doing the work of a licensed engineer?
We do. We have a code of ethics. It's covered in our handbook, and it clearly indicates, it spells out, you know, moonlighting. I believe it spells out, you know, performing licensed work without a license. The question was asked earlier about how do you reassure that this won't happen again. We are a discipline-based company, and we are set up with only civil teams and only mechanical, electrical, plumbing teams and only structural teams. We don't cross disciplines. In fact, that's taboo in our company. Your peer will turn you in long before I ever find out. You know, that's just, we don't cross those lines.
Mr. Eikenberry, has Mr. Godina performed any unlicensed work since, strike that. Has Mr. Godina performed any work that requires a civil engineer's license since January of 2021?
Not to the best of my knowledge.
Are you aware of any unethical conduct by Mr. Godina since January 2021?
Absolutely not.
Has he ever failed to meet the policies and procedures of the company with respect to his role as a project executive?
No, sir, he's not.
Has there been any conduct whatsoever that would cause you to believe that the public health, safety, and welfare would be subjected to a risk of harm if Mr. Godina's license were reinstated?
No, sir.
I believe you said that Mr. Godina called you when his license was revoked. Is that correct?
Yes, he did.
And that was approximately 2 years, is that correct?
Yeah, I couldn't tell you the exact date, but he called me, I'm going to assume very quickly, when he found that out. And we did discuss it and, you know, how we would handle it as a company.
Are you aware of any of the efforts by Mr. Godina since that time to correct the actions that led to the revocation?
I was aware he was searching for classes. I was aware that he was struggling finding classes that didn't have a prerequisite course, you know, to get into. But that's really to the extent of it. I didn't drill down. That's sort of his to complete.
And based on what you know of the circumstances of the revocation and IMEG zone practices for protecting against unlicensed work, are you confident that Mr. Godina has been sufficiently rehabilitated for reinstatement of his license?
I am. I've just not experienced, some of what I've heard from 2002. Complete surprise to me. Never would have guessed it in a million years. Richard's his quality of his work is excellent. His ethical vision, the way he talks to and helps out our younger employees. I mean it when I say he's like a father figure in that office.
Thank you. Nothing further at this time.
Thank you. Would the Deputy Attorney General like to ask the witness some questions?
Good morning, Mr. Eichenberry. Thank you for being here today.
Yes.
I won't ask any questions about Moline. Tempted.
Actually, we're the Quad Cities, but there's really 5 cities. It just confuses everybody, so I only say 4.
Iowa during my freshman year of college.
I'm only an hour away from Dubuque. Yeah. I live in Bettendorf.
I digress. In 2017, how many employees did IMEG have?
That's a great question. It would have been about 900. 900.
Okay.
Approximately.
And how many civil engineers?
2017, we would have had about 150.
And I believe you testified that there's 446 civil engineers?
I believe it's 446, that's correct.
When did it become 446 civil engineers?
Very recently, we purchased a multidisciplinary firm, or it's actually a civil firm in Virginia that has multiple teams. It's about 160 people.
Okay. In 2020, are you able to tell us how many civil engineers you had, or IMEG had, in California?
In 2020, so 3 years after. Well, it would just be a guess, but I'm going to say 48. I believe the team was larger at that time.
Let's go back to 2017 then. That's the time that you were out here supervising some of the work because some of the leadership left, correct?
Yeah, some of it I asked to leave too, so. We were downsized. I made the team much smaller.
Okay. During 2017, how many civil engineers worked in California for IMEG?
Probably 38.
How many project executives did you have?
I have no idea.
Do you recall how many do you recall how many project managers Mr. Thompson was overseeing during that time frame in 2017?
So in our firm, until this year, actually until 2023, project manager was a duty, it was not a title. So it wasn't a title that we would put on our business card. A project may come up that was in your wheelhouse that fit your expertise, like a medical project, and you would be asked to be the project manager for that particular project, but you also may have another project that somebody else is project managing. It was a duty, it really wasn't a title.
In terms of being a project or supervising a project, do the civil engineers need to be licensed?
For supervising a project, no.
For project management?
Because for project management, no. It depends on what type of project it is. We do a lot of security projects that involve, you know, entry into a building and gun safety and security like that. Those are not licensed engineers. That's not our expertise.
Did you know in 2017 that Mr. Godina was on probation with the California Board of Professional Engineers, Land Surveyors and Geologists?
I did not.
Okay. And you did not know about any disciplinary proceedings till Mr. Godina called you and told you that his license had been revoked?
That is correct. I would have had no reason to know, to be honest with you. I mean, we have our client executives at the time really run that team.
When Mr. Godina called you in 2020 to tell you that his license had been revoked, did he give you any of the background details of the discipline that he has had through the years with the board?
I don't recall if we went back that far. It was really I think it was, majority of it was just the latest, or the issue that I'm aware of.
And when you were involved, did that then cause any kind of action from your company in order to tell any of your insurers or your risk managers?
Well, I alerted corporate counsel, who probably in turn...
I don't want to know anything after you alerted corporate counsel.
Okay.
Thank you.
I alerted corporate counsel.
Thank you.
I'm an engineer.
I don't have any other questions.
Thank you. Does the board have any questions for the witness? Mr. Hartley?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Patrick, Mr. Eichenberger.
You can call me Pat.
Pat, did I hear right that you are licensed in Wisconsin?
That is correct.
Is that the only state you're licensed in?
That is correct.
Okay. I'm still unclear, and I'd like your assistance with making me more clear with how the proposals and contracts work in your offices. It's my understanding from previous testimony that proposals for some lesser amounts can be signed by an unlicensed person.
That is correct.
And contracts do require a contract that offers civil engineering services. Is every one of those contracts signed by is every contract that offers civil engineering services signed by a licensee of the state for the work that's happening in that same state?
It's usually dictated by the state. Like, a lot of times I will get a contract that'll say it has to be signed by an officer of the firm, but it never says, typically it doesn't say it has to be signed by a professional engineer in that state. You're committing the firm to do that work, not stating that you're performing the work itself.
And I say every state, our board doesn't govern every state, so I should just talk about California. For contracts that are offering civil engineering services in California, there needs to be a California licensee named in that contract. If that's not happening, it should.
Yeah, I think John said that in the contracts, John does do all of that, but we may give somebody a proposal to do a storm sewer investigation or come out and look at an erosion issue where we're really providing a visual opinion. And so I think sometimes they're talking about those things. We're not, you know, if we need to do work from there, then we would maybe go to a contractor, say, okay, this is what it's going to cost and here's going to work on the job. You know what I'm saying? We got a lot of field crews that do material testing, for instance. And they'll go out and we'll get a call and say, can you give us a number to do, 300 nuclear density tests? Well, that's something that our field crew, whoever runs that, would send that proposal out, and they're not always a licensed engineer. Now, if they're looking for geotechnical work that requires licensing, then absolutely.
Okay. I don't have any other questions.
Mr. Novak?
Thank you. My question is just, what is the nature of a project executive? Is this a common title within your company?
No, it's a common title within our company, yes. But when you get to the level of project executive or client executive, it can mean a lot of things, but a lot of it evolves around having the ability to have a relationship with your client. We have a client executive that is a fish and wildlife. He's got some degree in fish and wildlife. I'm not sure what his degree is. He's a client executive, and he's surrounded by professional engineers, right? So he builds the relationship. He does a lot of business development work. He's puts the right people on the right projects, and then the engineer takes over from there. So they don't have to be a licensed professional engineer to be called a client executive.
And then the project executive title that Mr. Godina has, are there dozens, hundreds of those within your organization?
Yes. I would say we've got approximately 70 teams, and every team has at least one project exec, some 3.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else? Any other questions? Okay.
I have a question.
Oh, Ms. Matheson, I was just going to ask you.
Thank you very much. I'm beginning to understand more about the role of a client executive. Mr. Thompson and you both testified that he, Mr. Thompson, as part of running his team, signs and seals all the work products prepared by his team members. What is your understanding of the level of involvement that Mr. Thompson has in preparing, reviewing the plans and calculations and specifications that he signs for his team members?
Without calling John a micromanager, I would say he scrutinizes to levels that may be uncomfortable for people. He's sitting right behind me. What do you want me to say?
He's very entertained by that answer.
John is very exact, very precise, he likes all his I's and T's crossed.
And to follow up, with that level of precision and scrutiny qualify as civil engineering review of plans and calculations and specifications?
I'm not sure I understood. I didn't hear the whole thing.
Can you repeat that, Betsy?
Yes. Civil engineers prepare plans, drawings, specifications, calculations. And if a junior staff member is doing that work, a licensed civil engineer reviews it. I wonder whether Mr. Thompson's level of precision and scrutiny rises to the level of an actual civil engineering review of the work product of all of his team members.
I talked a little bit ago about a trust factor, and I can tell you that, and this is me, I'm not out here as much as I used to be, but I can tell you that if someone has lost their license, John would sort of start all over. There's got to be a trust factor. That would be very similar to a new employee coming on board, and you got to get used to how well they respond to situations, how well they prepare their calculations, how well they prepare their work product. And I say with a high level of confidence that John does that. There's always trust that has to be had between employees, and I think he trusts Richard, his ability to mentor staff and things like that. But John would not put his seal on anything unless he has scrutinized it to a level that he feels comfortable with.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Matheson. Anybody else from here in the room? No? Okay, Your Honor.
All right, so we will return to Petitioner's Counsel for redirect.
Nothing further, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay, and to check with the DAG? Thank you, so the witness may be excused.
Thank you.
Thank you. My understanding is that petitioner has a witness in the webinar. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Honor. Dana Halliday was attempting to join earlier. I'm not sure if he is still on the line.
Still here.
Oh,
Are we able to see the witness on video, if possible? Because that can sometimes help to prevent crosstalk.
This is the moderator. You should see the witness on screen now.
Thank you. I see the name. I don't know, is the witness able to be on video? If not, we can proceed with audio alone.
This is the moderator. I see the witness.
I am on video at this moment.
Well, unfortunately for us, we only see your name. So I'm not quite sure how to remedy that. That would be with someone with more IT knowledge than myself.
This is Betsy Matheson, also on the WebEx, and just for information, I see only his name also.
Okay. Okay, well, I want to use everyone's time efficiently. It isn't the most important thing in the world to see the witness by video, so is the board president okay if we just proceed with audio?
Yes, we're fine.
Okay, yeah,
This is
just
the
to use
moderator.
everyone's time efficiently, we'll do it this way.
I can assure you that the recording will show the witness.
Then no objection.
Okay, well, I will just do an extra admonition then. It's very important that we only speak one at a time so that we have a clear record. So please just take an extra pause between every question and answer so one person is speaking at a time. So I cannot see the witness, but please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will... Oh, I can see you now. Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Halliday. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will provide in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury?
I do.
Thank you. You may put your hand down. Please state and spell your full name.
My full name is Dana Stanley Holliday. That's DANA STANLEY HALLADAY.
Thank you, Mr. Halliday. Petitioner's counsel may question the witness.
thank you. Good morning, Mr. Halliday. Thank you for being with us today. Where are you joining us from?
I'm just outside of St. Louis.
Okay. I understand that you've been listening in to the hearing today. Is that correct?
Yes, for 3 hours now, yes.
Did you have a chance, or did you observe Mr. Godina's testimony?
I did.
Thank you. Did you have a chance to hear the testimony of Mr. Thompson and Mr. Eikenberry as well?
Yes, I did.
And is it your understanding that we're here for the petition of Mr. Godina's petition for reinstatement?
Yes, it is.
Mr. Halliday, how do you, are you familiar with Mr. Godina?
I'm sorry, you broke up. How am I familiar with him? Is that what you asked?
Let's repeat the question.
Sorry, can you
Are you familiar with
ask the
Mr. Godina?
question again, please? Yes.
Can you please describe your professional relationship with Mr. Godina and how you come to know him?
I was a partner in a civil engineering and surveying firm in California, and we I actually hired Richard back in 2005, and he was one of my employees until 2010.
Okay. Are you a licensed civil engineer, Mr. Halliday?
Yes, I am. My number is C34751.
'When did you first obtain your license?
1980.
Okay, what's your current position of employment and job title?
I work for a company called WSP USA. I'm a director, senior supervising civil engineer.
How long have you been with WSP?
3 years.
And can you briefly describe your job duties as director, senior vice president?
Sure. I have my responsibilities is to build a civil engineer team that's within our St. Louis office for design, civil engineering, land development support for the transportation facilities group, which are architects that work on transportation related buildings. And then I in turn would then manage all those employees.
So if I understand correctly, you are responsible for supervising and managing the civil engineering team at WSP, is that correct?
My division, in my department, we actually have 5 civil engineering teams in the St. Louis office alone. They're all have different segments of the different types of work, but mine is associated with land development, site development, that relates to transportation.
I'm gonna take a pause here because the sound keeps cutting in and out, and it might work better if, I know I requested video, but if we focus the bandwidth solely on audio. So I'm gonna ask the witness to turn off his camera so that hopefully we can get a more clear audio feed. All right, please continue, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Halliday, can you hear me? Mr. Halliday, can you hear me?
I can now, yes.
Great.
I have my video turned off.
Thank you. Prior to WSP, you were at IMEG, is that correct?
Yes, I was at IMEG for about 3 years, and as Pat Barry mentioned, they had cutbacks, and I unfortunately was one that was let go. Prior to that, the firm that I had with some partners in Southern California, we sold our firm to a company called TTG, who was a company that merged with KJWW to make IMEG.
Okay, Mr. Halliday, which company were you at when you first met Mr. Godina?
I was at the firm that I was.
What was the name of that firm?
It's going to get confusing. It at the time was probably called Wagner Pacific. We started as Wagner Stanford, we came to Wagner Pacific, and eventually Wagner Holiday, and Holiday and Minmac. But I think when Richard was hired, I think with the time we had changed the name to, I think we're with Wagner Holiday at that time.
Thank you. And you hired Richard as a project manager, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And what year was that?
2005.
And how long, what was the duration of Mr. Godina's tenure with your company after being
About 5
hired in
years.
2005?
About 5
I
years.
believe you said, thank you. So from approximately 2005 to 2010, you worked with Mr. Godina, is that correct?
Correct, yes.
Is it fair to say you were his direct supervisor at that time?
Yes, that's her. I was his direct supervisor.
And what responsibilities did Mr. Godina have with your company from 2005 to 2010?
Richard's responsibilities were probably more like has been discussed here, the role of what someone talks about as a project manager, taking care of the clients, looking after the design, making sure that the designers were putting the plans together and getting them prepared, printed, processed for approval. And I want to mention that Richard, our policy in the company was that I was signing everything. If there was a civil engineering plan that was going by in the mall.
Mr. Halliday, we didn't hear the last part of your sentence, so if you wouldn't mind repeating it.
What I mentioned was that I signed all civil engineering plans. So Richard would not have been signing any drawings at all.
Thank you. After 2010, did you work with Mr. Godina any further?
I believe that we brought Richard in a couple contract consultant type projects. Richard has some very good skills in design and drainage calculations and such. And we were some people, so we contracted some work out to him, yes.
Okay. Mr. Halliday, we are having some connection issues on our end, but what I would ask is, you know, having worked with Mr. Godina from 2005 to 2015, if you could just opine on your observations of Richard as an employee and as an engineer.
Richard is a very thorough technical person. As is mentioned before, he dots the I's and crosses the T's. He has an analytical mind. He's very attentive to all the details. He's the epitome of an engineer.
Thank you. And I'm sure you've heard today, the board is evaluating whether Mr. Godina has been sufficiently rehabilitated to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the public if his license is reinstated. Do you have an opinion on that, one way or another?
I think Richard's license should be reinstated, yes.
Oh, thank you. I'm going to turn over at this time. Thank you, Mr. Halliday.
Does the Deputy Attorney General have any questions for the witness?
I do.
Okay. And please make sure to speak clearly into the microphone, especially when we're virtual like this.
Good afternoon, Mr. Halliday.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Godina was not licensed from 2007 to 2010 when he worked for you, correct?
Correct.
And you testified for Mr. Godina during his hearing on March 25th, 2015, that you continued to use Mr. Godina when his license was revoked. Is that correct?
Yes. I believe it is, yes.
So licensure is not important to you. Is that a fair statement?
That is not a fair
Objection.
statement.
All right, let me hear the basis for the objection.
Argumentative misstates the testimony. A legal conclusion, calls for a legal conclusion.
Ms. Flynn, a response?
I'll withdraw the question.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on. Okay, so we'll see if the board has any questions for the witness.
Any questions from the board? It looks like, oh, Ms. Matheson, do you have any questions for the witness?
Thank you for remembering me, and no, I do not. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Ms. Matheson, Your Honor.
Any questions on redirect for the witness?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
All right, the witness may be excused. Thank you, Mr. Halliday. So is there
Very good,
anything
thank
else
you.
in the petitioner's case?
Yes, Your Honor, we prepared a brief closing statement, if we may be heard on that.
Let me see if the DAG would like to go first. I generally go that order. Does, Ms. Flynn, do you wish to offer any closing remarks?
I do have closing remarks.
Okay, we'll start with Ms. Flynn.
Business and Profession Code Section 6710.1 states that protection of the public shall be the highest priority of the board in exercising its licensing, regulatory, and disciplinary functions. Petitioner must demonstrate both rehabilitation and current fitness for licensure by clear and convincing evidence. It's clear that petitioner delayed taking the college courses in order to comply with probation, which is why his license was revoked. I think the evidence has shown here today that it's a little too little and it's really late. Mr. Godina has had since 2015 to take these college courses, yet he makes excuses as to why he did not take them. He doesn't offer reasons, they were excuses. When he first was contacting the board in 2018, he was questioning the rulings and which courses he needed to take. He testified while he was here today that his interpretation of the judge's ruling was different. He did not want to follow what the board's directions were in order to take those college courses. He also testified here today that another reason he did not take the courses was because there were time factors at play, and he had a lot of different things that he was doing for IMEC and working really hard. Obviously, having a clear license is not a goal of Mr. Godina. Nowhere in his package and nowhere in his testimony did he testify or show evidence that he went to his company and said, I need to take these courses. What can you do to help me? I want to be licensed properly. His license has been disciplined by the board since 2002. You heard testimony from witnesses who did show up today and agreed to testify, but the people have concerns. Mr. Godina makes the company a lot of profits. They're a very busy company with a lot of contracts, and although Mr. Thompson has been described as being very thorough and overseeing everything, we also heard that Mr. Godina has a lot of responsibility, and he's allowed to do things. There's a concern that Mr. Godina has been operating and using his license while he is not licensed. The people have concerns for the protection of the public, and on that, I'll rest.
Thank you, Ms. Flynn. We'll now go to Petitioner's Counsel for closing.
Thank you. First and foremost, I take immediate issue with any reference that there's no evidence whatsoever that Mr. Godina was acting without a license since the revocation. There has been no evidence of that, and the fact that this would be brought up and impugns the testimony of not only Mr. Godina, Mr. Thompson, as well as other witnesses when they clearly stated otherwise. Second of all, a lot's been made about these two classes, yet the state is saying they want to protect the health and safety of the public, and you've heard multiple witnesses state that he is capable of doing that, and yet we're talking about two classes. It's important that he complied, and he didn't, and we've admitted that, and he's stated the reasons why he couldn't. Maybe they're not valid reasons, or the board believes that they're weren't sufficient, but that ended. Okay, there was a revocation of his license, and that ended. And it's been 2 years, and there's been testimony that he has been attempting to still act in the capacity he's allowed to, and has done a very good job. The key for the board to consider is Section 418 of Title 16 of the state of California. And that lays out clearly when you consider once there's a revocation and a petition for reinstatement. And those factors are whether he's taken additional courses or seminars or participated in trade organizations. And the answer is that he has. He has taken courses, and that he has participated in seminars through the trade organizations, other things. He testified to that. That much is clear. That's factor one. The next factor is whether the work that he was doing while employed, and so the state of California recognizes that you're going to still continue to work, that it's being done under the responsible charge. You heard that over and over, that next prong was met. Mr. Thompson clearly stated that, and Mr. Godina stated that he was doing that. The next factor is payment of any restitution. Well, that's obviously not, before, so that wasn't a part of the revocation. The final factor is whether or not potential harm and safety would be protected. And you've heard over and over from Mr. Godina and Mr. Thompson and Mr. Eichelberry that he is a very competent engineer, obviously not serving as an engineer with the PE, but that he's very competent in his job and his responsibilities, and that he does protect the health and safety. And that is really the question here. Will he protect the health and safety? It's not whether he took 2 college-level courses. It's whether he will protect the health and safety moving forward. That's the question that the board has to answer. And I think that's irrevocably a yes, that he will do that. He showed that he's had a long career. He's been mentoring and been helping. He shows that he's a key factor in the cog of IMEG and the work that he's performing. And if the board does feel that there's the only reason he should not have his license reinstated because of 2 college courses, then reinstate him and ask him to take 2 college courses. And to me, the defense that the state has put on is just about 2 college courses. You didn't hear anything from them, no witnesses, nothing about whether he will protect the health and safety, only just the statements of counsel. And so again, we would submit that he has been rehabilitated, that he will protect the health and safety. And if the board feels that he should still take these 2 courses, to reinstate him and allow him to finish those courses in an appropriate time manner. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you, everyone. That concludes the petition hearing in this matter. The case is submitted and the record is closed. We are off the record in this matter.
Okay, so we're going to move into closed session at this point. The board will meet in closed session to discuss the closed session items on the agenda. So at this time, I'd like to recess the open session. And Rick, do we have an estimation as to when we should resume?
Calculate reg 418.
We probably need to factor in lunchtime into that because we're already at 12:30. And then there's the amount of time that Rick can't predict that we will be talking, So
assuming an hour for discussion purposes and an hour for lunch?
I think you can take care of this discussion and your other closed session in 1 hour.
Okay, well, an hour and a half for the totality of the closed session.
I would recommend 3 o'clock at the earliest.
3 o'clock?
I'm with Rick on that
Okay.
assessment.
All right, so we will resume open session at 3 o'clock.
Hopefully.
No, we will.
Madam President, in the past, we've tried to be, we don't want to be waiting around if we're done.
I know.
And it's better to set an earlier time and then to say that no later or no earlier than 2:30. And if we end up resuming a little later, that's okay. I mean, I don't know if we can get it done by 2:30, but I'd hate to be done by 2:30 and then be sitting around waiting for 3 o'clock.
I'm feeling a little ambitious here. So let's go ahead with Mr. King's suggestion. We will resume open session at no earlier than 2:30.
But maybe later.
Betsy, are you on the WebEx now?
I'm here, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so all right, let's start. Okay, so we are resuming open session, back to our open session agenda, and we are going to start. Do we need to do a roll call or no?
I would suggest you do a roll.
Okay. So Selena, maybe we could do a roll call?
President D'Antonio?
Here.
President D'Antonio?
Here.
Vice President Hartley?
Here.
Dr. Amistad? Dr. Asghari? Ms. Irish? Mr. King?
Here.
Ms. Matheson?
Here.
Mr. Novak?
Here.
Dr. Qureshi?
Present.
Mr. Rufino? Mr. Sanchez? Ms. Wong? We have a quorum.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so we go to item number 6, report from the Department of Consumer Affairs on departmental activities.
Yes, we have someone here.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon. If you could, turn on the microphone. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for allowing me an opportunity to provide an update on the Department of Consumer Affairs today. My name is Yvonne Durantis-Giles, and I will be starting off with an update on new DCA staff. And so we are very excited to announce that the governor recently appointed leaders to DCA's Board and Bureau Relations team. Melissa Gear is serving as DCA's new Deputy Director of Board and Bureau Relations, and she joined the department on October 3rd. On November 14th, Yvonne Durantis-Giles, myself, began serving as the new Assistant Deputy Director of Board and Bureau Relations. She previously served as Senior Emergency Services Coordinator at the California Governor's Office of Emergency Services and as a Policy Analyst and Task Force Coordinator since 2019. She was an Executive Fellow at Cal OES from 2018 to 2019. We are excited for the new BBR team in place to serve and assist our boards and bureaus. We are also pleased to announce the appointment of Kathleen Nichols as Chief of Division of Investigation. She was sworn in on December 5th. Ms. Nichols has extensive law enforcement experience with over 26 years of investigating and supervisory experience. Her experience will assist in bringing consistency between the units within the division. The department will begin the process to fill the Deputy Chief position in the Health Quality Investigation Unit as soon as possible. The DCA Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Steering Committee update includes Director Kimberly Kirkmeyer established the department's first Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Steering Committee, the DEI Committee, to guide the department in its equity strategy, initiatives, and action plans. The DEI Committee held its official kickoff meeting on November 9th and will convene its second meeting in January of 2023. The committee will focus on 3 core areas, which include, number 1, workforce, recruitment and retain diverse talent, so hiring and onboarding. Number 2, workplace, actively educate leadership and staff to increase awareness and create an inclusive culture. through employee engagement, communication, strategies, education, and training. And number 3, marketplace. Serve consumers, applicants, and licensees with sensitivity to their diverse backgrounds and perspectives, which includes multilingual outreach and access, expanding entry into the profession, legislative and regulatory actions. Update on strategic planning. In accordance with Governor Newsom's executive order, strategic plans in effect July 2023 and beyond must be developed or updated to more effectively advance equity and drive outcomes that increase opportunity for all. In response, DCA is revising its strategic planning process to incorporate more inclusive public engagement, data analysis, and embedding diversity, equity, and inclusion into the strategic planning process. Over the coming months, the DEI committee will inform the strategic planning process. By March of 2023, DCA will begin implementing the revised process and working with the boards in updating existing strategic plans and developing new strategic plans. The new strategic plan and logo. On November 2nd of 2022, DCA released its 2022 to 2027 strategic plan. And additionally, with unveiling its new strategic plan, the department also released a new logo. The new plan and logo represent the next chapter and future of the department. Director Kirkmeyer stated that consumer protection continues to guide our mission and priorities. Our department holds itself to high standards in providing outstanding support services, oversight, and innovative solutions to those who regulate California professionals and vocations, so that through this partnership, all Californians are informed, empowered, and protected. The department's strong commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as our shared dedication to each and every consumer, is built into the framework of the plan. The new logo is very representative of DCA. The shield represents the department's strong and long-standing protection mandate. The state represents all 40 million Californians. DCA has pledged and are honored to serve. The star represents consumer protection as DCA's true guiding principle, the department's own North Star. The Office of Public Affairs will be providing more information in the coming weeks on the implementation of the new logo. Our Promise campaign. DCA is excited to take part in the annual Our Promise campaign, California State Employees Giving at Work campaign, and celebrate 65 years of caring for California. Board members should have received an email from the DCA Our Promise co-chairs, Chief Deputy Director Christine Lally and Melissa Gear, with information on how to give. The campaign allows Californians to donate to nonprofit or nonprofits of their choice through December. With your assistance, DCA hopes to continue its tradition of generosity and caring for our communities through this year's campaign. Please assist us in encouraging all members and staff to donate. Please contact Melissa Gear if you have any questions or can assist. As travel resumes again, it is important to remember that all state travel arrangements must be made through DCA's approved travel agency, the Cal Travel Store or Concur. All board members and staff must use the most economical fares possible when traveling by air on official state business. Typically, this will be through Southwest Wanna Getaway option. However, there may be additional charges if changes are made to the flight. Flight changes to the date and time for personal convenience are not approved or justified. The traveler will be responsible for any associated charges. If you have any questions, please contact the Board and Bureau Relations team. Required board member trainings reminder. As 2022 comes to a close, it is the perfect time to make sure that you have completed all of your required board member trainings and submitted your certificates of completion to your executive officer, NDCA at memberrelations@dca.ca.gov. Board members are required to complete Board Member Orientation Training, or BMOT, within the first year of appointment or reappointment. Ethics training within 6 months of appointment or repeat every 2 years. Sexual harassment prevention within the first year and every 2 years. And defensive driver training within the first year and every 4 years. These trainings are offered multiple times a year in various formats for your convenience. If you have any questions or need additional information about any of the trainings or anything else, please contact the Board and Bureau Relations team. Partnership with the State Controller's Office. DCA is partnering with the State Controller's Office to share information with consumers and certain licensees about unclaimed property. State law requires banks, insurance companies, corporations, and other entities to report and submit their customers' property to the SCO after a period of inactivity, generally 3 years. Many DCA licensees will benefit from this partnership, as they will educate them about the responsibility to report unclaimed property and assist with compliance. Additionally, the program is a great resource for all consumers to locate their unclaimed property. Thank you again for this opportunity to present an update, and DCA and the BBR team look forward to working and assisting you. Thank you.
I just wanted to comment on the required forms that are to be submitted. Selena will never let us forget. She's always very diligent about making sure that we provide the verifications to her, and then she takes care of it. So I think we'll stay good.
Sanchez?
I was wondering if we may have the text that you're reading from just to refer to.
Yeah, definitely.
Honestly.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any other questions? Mr. Rufino?
Madam Chair, thank you. Just a quick comment regarding your DEI initiative and the special committee that the department is putting together. I want to commend the department, and so please pass on that information, not only that we can commend, but keep us posted on what kind of initiative and what kind of a thing that you guys are doing, and is there anything that we can do as a board member to augment or to support? Please keep us posted.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Yeah, and like I mentioned, there will be a meeting that we'll be convening in January.
Anyone else?
Sure, this is Betsy Matheson.
Oh, I was just going to ask you, Betsy. Do you have any questions?
Just a comment. This is Betsy Matheson, board member via WebEx. Yvonne, congratulations and welcome to your new job.
Thank you.
We met Melissa Gear in Riverside, and I'm sorry I'm not there to meet you in person today, but I'm sure we will meet.
Thank you. I look forward to meeting you. Thank you.
Congratulations again, and nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item number 7, administration.
Yes, Don Hall, Administrative Manager, is on WebEx and will present this.
Tara?
Can we take public comment on the DTA report?
Thank you. Any public comments for those on WebEx?
Thank you, Tara.
This is the moderator. We are now open for public comment via WebEx. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take about 15 seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the agenda?
Yes, thank you. And since there is no one here in the hearing room, I'm going to assume there are no public comments for real-life persons. So now we will move on to item number 7, administration. Dawn?
I'm here, thank you. Hello, this is Dawn Hall. I'm the Administrative Services Unit Manager.
And our financial report begins on page 19 of the board materials with the budget authority page. And then I'd like to draw your attention to page 21, which is a restatement of the FM13 fiscal year 21-22 results. We included a note with this that there were about $175,000 in additional information technology expenses that we were made aware of by the accounting team. And they've been added to the expenses for the prior fiscal year. So that information has been updated and included in the board materials for you. There were no changes to the revenue for the prior year. The FM3 revenue for the current year is slightly lower than it was for FM3 in the prior year. We did note that in the prior year, we had a higher than anticipated volume of paper applications that came in the first the first 3 months of the year. And it also was a higher annual renewal cycle year. And so this lower revenue for this fiscal period was anticipated, and it's not very far off expectation. The fund condition is, and the expenses are on page 24. And the fund condition is on page 26. So as expected in fiscal year 21-22, we did see a slight increase in the fund reserves as expected with the fee increase and the higher volume renewal cycle year. The revenue forecast for, I'm sorry? The revenue forecast for the current year, the budget year and the budget year plus one are very conservative because our revenue has been volatile the past few years related to economic conditions, the pandemic, and implementation of the Connect platform, which has changed the revenue cycle slightly in terms of when we see renewal payments happening and higher than expected volume for applications. We're continuing to closely monitor the fund condition and reserves and will alert you, the board, to any concerns that we have. However, at this time, we feel the fund condition is stable. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Dawn. Any questions or comments from the board? Yes, Dr. Q.
Thank you. Dawn, just a quick question. When I look at this on page 24, there is a number highlighted in yellow of 10.963 million and some extra numbers. I was wondering why that number, or why that number doesn't show up on the fund condition on page 26. In fact, none of the numbers I don't think any of the numbers I see on page 24 as overall totals align with anything on the fund condition page. Shouldn't they?
Thank you. I'm looking at that now. So the projected revenue for the current year is 11 million, and that is close to what's on.
Yeah, I think I was referring more to the costs. 24 is
Yeah.
costs, I think. Page 24 is the costs, not the revenues.
Right. You had said that none of the numbers were aligning to what was on the fund condition, so I was just checking all of them.
Yeah.
But I will have to check and get back to you. We may have to revise this. It looks as though the wrong fund condition might have been included in the board materials, because you're right. It should match. The 10.9 should match what we have for the disbursements.
Would the total disbursements would match the 10.9, or would it just be line 1111?
1111 Should
Okay,
be.
so that's the one that's slightly different. Okay, that's not as bad. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, Kobe?
Just a quick question. The state has gone from being unbelievably flush to staring down a possibly very significant deficit. Just wondering if that will have any impact on the assumption that we'll continue to move up by 3% per year.
Dawn, do you want me to start with some thoughts on that before you do?
Certainly, thank you.
So we don't automatically, us at this board, our staff, we don't automatically assume 3% ourselves on everything. As Dawn mentioned, we try to be a little bit more conservative because our revenues have varied more than usual in the past few years. Though I will say that we are anticipating several things that could happen. Obviously, there's the far-reaching loans, special fund, the general fund loans that we haven't heard anything about that, and we're not sure if we ever will, but there's always that occurrence that could be out there. But we're also beginning to see numbers about increase in pro rata. So if you look on page, the fund condition page, line 9900 under expenditures, statewide pro rata, you can see how the pro rata has jumped a lot. We're expecting to see that jump, primarily due to new contracts being negotiated and salary cost across the board in state operations, not necessarily our board, but across the board. That it will filter down to DCA, that will filter down to boards and bureaus. So we are expecting that we will see some impact in the future based on how these numbers start coming out, and we'll know a lot more by spring, but we probably really won't know until probably by midsummer. But we are anticipating there will be some fluctuation there, some indirect effect. Dawn, is there anything you want to add to that?
No, I know that the board in the past has seen a higher fund reserve, but in light of the fact that the general fund does sometimes come back to the special funds, we're keeping a modest fund reserve, which actually may be protective for us in terms of having to loan any money to the general fund.
One more question. In almost every report, we are told that not to worry about out years because the actual numbers on the expenditure side tend to be less than what is actually budgeted. That's fine. Which line item does that usually fall into? Is it the big one, the 1111?
So yes, the 1111 line is the one that we update for the board materials to make sure that that's more closely aligned to what our actual expectations are because of the reversions over the budget authority that we have every year.
Thank you.
Yeah, so just to add to that, so basically is we have more appropriation, we have the ability or authorization to spend more than we actually do. And that usually shows up 1111, like both you and Dawn pointed out. But there's also the factor of the varying revenue coming in too, that is having some more effect than it used to have.
Any other comments? Betsy, do you have any comment or questions?
No, thank you for asking.
Okay. Any public comment on WebEx?
We are now accepting public comment via WebEx. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the agenda?
Yes, thank you. And there are no public comments here in the hearing room. So moving on to item number 8, enforcement. Tiffany?
Good afternoon. I'm Tiffany Criswell, the Enforcement Program Manager, and your statistics for enforcement begin on page 29. And if there's any comments or questions, I'm here for you.
Cool, thanks. No questions from the board? Betsy, do you have any questions?
No, thank you. Good job, Tiffany.
Yes, Christina.
I apologize for coming back late. So Tiffany, just a quick question, maybe you can help us summarize any noticeable trends for enforcement. Sometimes the data, say something, but also not really, saying a whole lot. And so just from the enforcement point of view, what will be something that is worthwhile for the board to pay attention to?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that actually yesterday. And I think I've mentioned it before, Connect, which is really a great tool for us to be able to collect complaints online and someday soon use them for workload management. You may see some trends. Some of the issues I'm seeing right now are that intake may take a little longer. In the world of entering in things with, as in Twitterverse, we're getting fairly incomplete initial complaints. It's taking a little more time during intake to determine potential violations, jurisdiction. So I'm concerned that may increase. We have some document upload problems where we used to get a physical file. Now we're getting files we can't open, aren't supported, or having to get another means to get them because Connect doesn't accept certain file types and sizes. So there may, for a little while until we improve our ability to process through Connect as it's being built out more, you may see some longer time frames, but I'm going to expect that's largely going to be on the intake side of it. Not necessarily reported here as much, but in later reports, we have a separate statistic more for intake in terms of how many complaints we receive. And I've said before, we're getting a lot of complaints that are completely irrelevant to our board, that are very much not within our jurisdiction if it's even remotely related to, even close to the engineering field. So I expect intake, number of complaints received has skyrocketed. Duplicates, we're getting a lot of duplicate complaints that we're finding are, I think, user error. Somehow they're not thinking they got uploaded, so they're sending them again. So total numbers are going to be quite increased, but that's a different stat for intake before we actually open a complaint. So I'm going to see some increases there. So it just may not be a real true number of complaints that are actually within our jurisdiction or have anything to do with the professions at all. So we'll see if it's even really something you'll notice on a larger scale.
So it's a good problem to solve, maybe.
I mean, I'm glad we're more accessible to the consumer and licensees and agencies, but along with that comes we're getting very few words coming in through where it's requiring a lot more of our staff registrar review because we're not even sure what they're trying to convey. We may not have any documents loaded. So it's a problem, but I'm glad we're more accessible. But it's gonna present a different set of problems in terms of statistics, but it won't change the workload quite as much because we're pretty responsive in that pretty quickly. But in terms of numbers, you may see a little more of an increase in numbers.
When you say there's no words, it's not grunts, is it? I mean, is it?
Microphone.
Mike?
No documents. Few words, no documents.
Okay.
Few words.
So they just send you a set of plans or a map and no explanation?
Can be. You know, we have a box where there's unlimited amount of characters within the box. They can complete their complaint, but if, you know, in today's world, we're not getting quite the lengthy explanations and narratives that we got with our hard copy complaints. Now we're getting a sentence or two. Our lay staff are not as versed in what the complaint really is, so we are relying on our registrars to assist in even understanding which area of practice it even is. So, you know, the world of shorter words, you know, sentences and
140 characters.
Abbreviations. It's like, it's not Twitter, but we don't have a character limit, but they're limiting themselves more than we would like.
Okay, thank you, Tiffany. Any public comment on WebEx?
We are once again open for public comment on the matter. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, shall we return to the agenda?
Yes, thank you. And there are no public comments here in the hearing room. Thank you, Tiffany. Okay, moving on to item number 9, exams and licensing.
And that will be Larry Carest, our examinations manager on WebEx.
Good afternoon. I wanted to see if I might be able to push my presentation for a couple of minutes. For Metric, who would also be on the call with me, I've not been able to get them on the line just yet. So if I could skip an agenda item, maybe.
Sure. So we would go now to item number 10.
Sure, I can handle that.
The executive officer's report.
I can save Larry's day, sure.
Thank you.
You owe him lunch, Larry.
Oh, he was going to be here in person earlier, so. Okay, I will begin on the executive officer's report. Let me get to the right section. So Nancy, do you want to handle the rulemaking status report, please?
Hi, this is Nancy Eisler, the Assistant Executive Officer. The rulemaking status report's on page 51. We have the one rulemaking relating to exam fees specific to the ASBOG exams, abandoned applications and postponements. It's currently in the 45-day public comment period that will end in the end of December. We have received one comment so far, so staff will be reviewing that and preparing the response and information that we'll present to the board at the February meeting. And then the other ones we're still working on to have them ready to be submitted to the legal office for review.
Any questions or comments from the board members? Betsy, do you have anything?
No, thanks. Good job, Nancy.
Okay, and then do public comment? Rick, do public comment? Okay, so public comment from anyone on the WebEx?
We are open for public comment on agenda item 10. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the agenda?
Yes, thank you. And there are no public comments here in the hearing room. So moving on.
Okay, I'll move on to the business modernization report on page 52. And we, as mentioned before, we're currently in our maintenance and operations phase of the project. Product increment 5 went live on October 12th, and for our board consisted primarily of bug fixes and requested refinements. Staff is currently working with the Agile development team on additional application types, and the priority right now is the geologists in training and professional geologist applications so that we can align with the national examination schedules. And that is anticipated right now to go live sometime late January, we're hoping. And that is my report on that, if you have any questions.
Quick question. What's left?
What's left in its entirety or for application types?
In its entirety, yeah.
Okay, so first of all, we are finishing up the last few applications. The GIT and the geologist, we're aligning those because they have both national exams and state exams. The geologists have a state exam, but because of the changeover ASBOG to CBT beginning this next year, we're doing that. We've already have some of the design done for the remaining application types. We're just trying to align it with our normal application receipt timeframes and the examination timeframes. There's only a few of those left: geotechnical, traffic, geophysicist, and structural. After that, that's going to be pretty much the first half of this 2023. And then our priority of that is to continue with the rest of the enforcement-related development, which will work on the back office side to help Tiffany's staff with monitoring and managing all their workload instead of working between systems right now. And then after that, into 2024, we have a few remaining things we still want to accomplish. If you want, I could elaborate a little bit more on that with maybe a very high-level schedule at, say, the next meeting.
That's great. Yeah. We haven't had a report, an in-depth report on this in a while, and again, continued success and continued congratulations.
Okay, any other questions from the board members? Any questions? Betsy?
No, thank you.
Public comments on WebEx?
This is the moderator. We are now open for public comment via WebEx. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the agenda?
Yes, thank you. And there are no comments, no public comments here in the hearing room. Moving on.
So Betsy, I'm going to, I'm sorry, not Betsy. Betsy, I want you to hear this too. Rosanna,
Okay.
I want to cover, I'm going to check with Larry to see if he's ready. It sounds like Prometric staff may be online. Larry, are you ready?
I have 3 people that are scheduled here from Prometric. I should say two of the 3 that we were going to have from Prometric are here.
Do you want me to continue and give you a few more minutes?
Yeah, a few more minutes would be great.
Okay.
Thanks.
So I'll address item under the Executive Officer's Report, item D or item C next. That will be on page 53. So at the last meeting, staff brought, this microphone's not in the best location. Staff brought forward recommended meeting dates for 2023, and after some discussion with the board, we revised a few of the dates to kind of work around some challenges that the board members have brought up. So you can see how we adjusted. Primarily, I believe it was February and April. We may have even adjusted June. We may have done that. But we also, down in the lower left-hand corner of that page, you'll see that we were able to secure DCA facilities, just like we're having here today. For April, June, and September, that's when we recommended our DCA meetings, our Sacramento area meetings. So I just want to put this out here, and any comments from the board?
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Rufino.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I apologize in advance. Unfortunately, I was not at the last meeting, so if these dates are going to work for everybody else, that's fine, but I have, unfortunately, a conflict on 2 dates. So if it's possible, like the July one, it's my first conflict, but I'm available on the 13th and 14th of July, the 20th and 21st, or even the first week of August. And the second conflict, if it doesn't create a problem, is on the September meeting. On that month, I'm available the 7th, the 8th, or the 28th, or the 29th. Are these 2 dates set in concrete? If they are, I understand.
I would say the September ones are pretty much set because we've had to reserve locations here at DCA.
Is the July one?
The July, we'll take it back and discuss if we can. And if we can adjust it, we'll bring it forward, Ed.
Excellent, thank you. Otherwise, Madam Chair, just please note for the record, that unfortunately I would have to miss those 2 meetings.
Understood, thank you. Anybody?
Yeah.
No.
The DCA meetings will either be in this facility or at HQ2 across the parking lot. April, June, and September. It's the lower left-hand corner.
Paul?
I can't hear you without your microphone.
Did we decide on where we have the meeting on February yet, or no?
No.
Rosanna?
Is that your question?
No, I have a separate one. I'm sorry. I had the same question he did, but also I just want to let you know I have a conflict for the June meeting, and I do not plan to attend. Thank you.
Okay.
As scheduled, I cannot attend the February meeting.
Okay.
So this schedule's working as planned. This is great. We don't normally adjust for 1 or 2 people, but as we get later in the year and we may get near quorum issues, then we can always adjust schedules if necessary. So we'll just try to save these the best you can, and if we can work around schedules, we will.
Okay. All right, do we have to do public comments on this?
Yes, do public comment on this one after checking with Betsy first, see if she has any comments. But
Okay.
I would like to cover D and E also. We can do the public comment for all 3 of those at one time, I think.
Okay. Let me just ask Betsy. Betsy, do you have any comments or questions on the board meeting schedule?
Looks good to me.
Okay, go ahead, Rick. Go ahead, Rick. You were going to do the other 2 items, and then we'll do public
I'm
comment.
sorry, yes, I was distracted.
Yeah, I know.
That's what you get for sitting next to Frank.
Yeah. And I'm the one who placed the names here, so I can't blame anyone else. For personnel update, we have a few announcements. So our longtime enforcement analyst, I think it was our second to last one we inherited from the former geologist and geophysicist board, Corrine Gray. She retired. We were sorry to see Corinne go. She had a lot of expertise and experience with geology complaints, and now the rest of the enforcement analysts are picking the short straw to see who handles geologist complaints. But yeah, we're sorry to see Corinne go. She was great. And I can't hear you without your microphone. Don't know, we'll see. And we still have a position we're working on in licensing for support that we're trying to hire for that. Also, I'm pleased to announce that Nancy was successful in hiring the senior registrar geologist. So we will have our new geologist start January 3rd, and that's Joshua Goodwin. And we're very excited about that, especially me, because I'm tired of these applications. So. And additionally, personnel-wise, we do have some seasonal clerks that have kind of termed out in terms of their available timeframes, and our staff has anticipated that, and we're working quite a bit between administrative and licensing on how to cover each other's workload and redistribute. There's still some learning in terms of workload due to the Connect system and how that has changed how everybody works. So the staff has been doing a great job on adjusting to all that and figuring out the best approach, and I believe they'll continue to do that. Also, I don't know if I mentioned last time, but we hired a new person in the front desk, Elaine. I think I did mention that last time. Elaine at front desk. She's been doing a great job on that in the short time she's been there. For you that remember or not, currently our office is being remodeled. So our front desk is not at our front desk, it's in our conference room. And she sits by herself literally about 6-7 hours a day. Oh. So we're looking forward to her being actually in the office here, hopefully within the next week. And she's looking forward to it too, so she can actually see coworkers. And that's all I have for personnel.
Any board members have any questions? Betsy, do you have any questions?
Nope, just a comment. I'm glad to hear we're going to have a new geologist registrar soon.
Okay. All right, Rick. ABET?
And then for item E, ABET, we have no update this time of year.
Okay.
Nothing going on. So I would suggest you ask for public comment for C, D, and E at this point.
Okay. So with this, let's go ahead and do public comment on WebEx for items C, D, and E of item 10.
We are now open for public comment for item 10, Charlie, Delta, and Echo. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the agenda?
Yes, thank you. And there are no public comments here in the hearing room. Rick?
I would like to, we have on our agenda for the board meeting schedule to take possible action. If we don't normally have you guys adopt that meeting schedule, but I just wanted to point that out. Item F, so the ASBOG report. I'm going to speak briefly on this and then ask Betsy what she would like to report on as our voting delegate for that. Both of us attended virtually. We were able to attend virtually, and we're not able to travel in person to this. I believe several of us attended it virtually. I was only able to for about half the meeting because, as what happens when you attend things virtually, sometimes you get pulled away by other calls and meetings. Majority of the discussion that I witnessed was about the CBT, computer-based testing conversion of the exams and upcoming and questions and how everyone was doing for that. But also one of the interesting topics I heard coming from the administrators of the various boards was about continuing education. And I thought it was very interesting, given the discussion this board has brought up several times recently and the discussions that happened with NCWS. I think there was one that mentioned, I can't remember which state it was now, but they mentioned how, and there was a second state that basically agreed with this, was that after the recently, within the last 5-7 years, they implemented continuing education mandatory, that a lot of their licensees that would ordinarily just keep their license and they may be retired from employment, but they may keep their license and renew it every 2 years, that they just gave them up. They saw a dramatic decrease in license renewals. And this was a smaller board with a smaller licensing population, so it had a significant financial hit on their revenue. And there was another board that chimed in and said they noticed that too, that to expect that those boards that will go to implement continuing education may see a drop-off percentage-wise, which may be different for us because of our larger population. But I thought that was very interesting. I wanted to bring that to the board's attention because I never had really thought about that in that same sense before. Because our engineers, surveyors, and geologists tend to never give up their licenses unless they have to. And as you guys have witnessed several times. And so I just thought I'd bring that up. That was really interesting. Betsy, is there anything you would like to add today? I know you served in a special committee or a special panel presentation, so I know you have that information too.
Sure, and I also made some notes about the continuing education requirements. The second state that said, yeah, we lost licensees also was Oregon. Someone said that continuing education requirement is seen as a barrier to licensure in some states, but North Carolina, their board added a continuing education requirement after the North Carolina Dental Board case because some people involved said it made the license, quote unquote, more solid. So I see that when we start addressing that action item and our objective in our strategic plan, we'll have a lot to consider. And also related to the strategic plan, coincidentally, the ASBOG Secretary's report included a statement saying our profession is one of the least racially and ethnically diverse of all the STEM professions. And he said that ASBOG has a role in promoting our profession to people of all ethnicities. And he wants individuals to recommit our profession to people of color and minorities and grow a more diverse workforce in the future. So that fits right in with our Governor Newsom's executive order regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion. There was a discussion of whether ASBOG could maintain a member record similar to the NCEES record for engineers and surveyors. The initial response was ASBOG is too small. It can't afford to maintain people's records so that once they get licensed in one state, it's easier to get licensed in another state. And the American Institute of Professional Geologists said they've been considering providing that service to geologists, but there are questions about confidentiality and security when what amounts to a professional society might be collecting people's personal information. But there may be further discussion on that. The panel discussion in which I participated was to talk about how various states are handling curriculum requirements for qualifying geological sciences degrees. And one illustration of the problem, why it's difficult for states to do what we, with Lori Rocca's guidance, managed to pull together, which is some specific required courses and electives to qualify for licensure. One state said that parents and students are pushing for more customizable degrees, so it makes it more of a challenge. We heard from people in different universities and different boards about how they're addressing the problem that we in California already addressed with our rulemaking from 2019. But we'll have to keep up with all of that. So task analysis survey in progress to do for geology, what we are considering later in our agenda for a couple of aspects of our professions. Let's see, what else? I think that's it. I was happy to represent our board virtually there.
Thank you, Betsy. Does any comments from the board members? Okay, any public comments on WebEx?
We are once again open for public comment, this time on 10F. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the agenda?
Yes, thank you. And there are no public comments here in the hearing room. Rick?
Okay, as much as I know that everyone enjoys a riveting discussion from the EO report, we're going to take a little break from this and go back to Larry with the examinations. Larry, are you there in the field?
I'm here. I can't guarantee a more riveting conversation than we're getting from Rick, but thank you for covering for me briefly, Rick. Hello, everybody. My name is Larry Carest, and I'm the examinations manager here at the board. And I wanted to give you a couple of, well, really a couple of fill updates, and then also we have some test plan areas that we were hoping for some action on today. But we'll start this off. I just wanted to start off on a quick little general update on some examination related items. That being that the fall 2022 exams have successfully completed, and the results have started to be released for some of the programs. The land surveyor and the traffic results have been released, and we're expecting all the rest of them to be released next week. Once all the results have been sent out, then I'll compile the data and provide it to you at the next board meeting, so you can look at the stats from fall, and also have the stats from all of 2022. And I'll have that for the next board meeting. And also, Rick had just touched on this about ASBOG and their transition for their ASBOG exams, the fundamentals of geology and practice of geology, are transitioning to computer-based testing for the March exam. We're still keeping in contact with ASBOG, bringing the California concerns, with us as they're making this transition, and information is being relayed as we know it out to applicants and examinees, just so we can keep them in the loop as much as we know it. And we're encouraging geology applicants and examinees to visit the ASBOG's website, and we'll also be posting on our website what we get from ASBOG too, just to keep people in the loop. That for exam administration, that's all I had. Does anybody have any questions on that before we move forward?
Yeah, I have a question. This is Rosanna. So somebody asked me the other day if we keep or if we publish demographics on our examinees and our licensees, and where someone could access that information.
We do not collect demographics. So even we cannot access that information.
We don't because we can't, or because?
It's, I guess it would depend on what type of demographics. We don't collect gender, we don't collect ethnicity. Of course, we collect birthday with application. We collect information with application, but we don't collect anything with the examination.
So how do we comply with the governor's DEI mandate?
Good question, I'm not sure.
There is a provision relating to applicants who have a criminal conviction, where they are asked to respond to a voluntary anonymous survey, which would provide demographic information. We don't get very much, we don't have a lot of applicants with criminal convictions, and we don't get a big response to that survey. But that was put into law when they made changes to what types of crimes and convictions and everything that we could consider. And one of the issues that was raised was the boards don't collect that kind of demographic information, and it was questionable whether we had the authority to. And so that's part of why it was made this voluntary survey.
So it's not just our board, it's no boards?
That's my understanding. Tara may have more
information.
Different practice acts provide different statutory authority for boards to collect certain demographic data. So like where you might have like the medical board or other healthcare professional acts authorizing the board to collect demographic data such as ethnicity or gender. You have to have that statutory authority because you don't want to start getting a bunch of information that you will then have to disclose. So in some of this information, if you're collecting it, as identified with the person, it could be confidential and identifying identifying information. So typically the way is they can request the information on ethnicity or other demographic data, and then they would compile it without any identifying information and then report that data set to the legislature. That's typically how it would go. And, you know, given the recent trends to improve equity and diversity, you may actually see something about this in your sunset review.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, right now in Connect, or with our paper applications, we don't request that information for obvious reasons. We don't have the authority to collect it.
So when you say we might see something like that in our sunset review, like we would be told to maybe consider that, or we would bring it up as part of our report?
I want to be careful here. I don't want to create any problems for Rick. It could go either way. The legislative committees could ask questions of the board regarding what data they collect. It just depends on the questions that the committees come up with for the boards that year. Alternatively, if you want to start collecting data to start trying to identify the licensee population or areas that you're weak in, you could, at this time, go to the legislature and in your sunset review report say, you know, create a new issue. You know, you're trying to improve diversity in the profession and you're seeking the ability to collect demographic data. So it could go either way.
Okay, thank you.
That was a very good Switzerland response there, Terry. It's something that I don't know if I would recommend you bring it up. I wouldn't say it's an increase in workload, but I would say that reporting is probably one of the most significant challenges we have with the new systems, Connect, or even the subsequent projects going on with their version of Connect or Breeze. It's one of the more challenging things is getting the right reporting. We're still trying to get other reporting that we want to do. It's probably one of the biggest asks of any of the new systems, and that's where the workload would come in, is getting that functionality.
Understood. Dr. Q?
I almost hesitated to say anything, but I feel like I should. We did go through a discussion on this kind of an issue at the NCWS level, specifically with the committee known as EPE, which is the examinations for PE. They developed call it a strategic document. It wasn't a plan, but a strategic document discussing how to measure the population of examinees versus committee members to make sure that the people writing the tests are matching the demographics of the people taking the test. So we went through, and to be honest, it took us 3 years.
Wow.
So it's not a simple
Sure.
process, and it's probably not something we would entertain probably at all by the time we get to sunset. But there is some guidance at that level if we wanted to use it. And they chose, in terms of collecting the data, they chose to do it as a voluntary survey after a person passed or took one of the exams. When they got their results, they would get a link to take a survey.
Got it.
You know, to follow up on that, now that Dr. Q kind of broke the dam on that.
Sorry.
In our experts for examinations and enforcement, we don't have long waiting lines of people wanting to serve as experts for us. We don't have any waiting line. We take anyone and everyone that's appropriately licensed. So that's one thing that could happen, is if something like that would affect us, it would make it even more difficult for us to find a sufficient number of experts to help us with our exams and our enforcement. Not saying it's not a good idea. We'll just take anyone. It's appropriately licensed and have a clean record.
Okay. All right. Good discussion. Okay. So go back to Larry. Do we need to do public comments here?
No.
Okay.
Continue.
Okay. Larry?
Have we lost you, Larry?
Oh, no.
Okay, Larry, you're muted. No.
This is the moderator. Larry appears to be unmuted. Bear with us just a moment. We're going to see if we can get some help on the screen.
That'll teach you to bring up that conversation with Larry. We could switch back to the studio on the EO report and go back to our man in the field, Larry, when he's available.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Sure.
Okay.
That's fine.
Okay, so next item under the EEO report is National Council of Examiners for Engineering Surveying, NCWS. These are our national providers for engineering and surveying exams. So the first item is, as we know, our own Dr. Q here is the current Western Zone Vice President for NCWS on their board of directors. And he, because of the position he's in, the timing of the position he's in, he's eligible for being nominated for president-elect for the entire organization come next spring, correct, Dr. Q? Will it be next spring, 2 springs?
It's the following spring.
Well, following springs in 2024?
Yes, in Montana.
Okay. So glad you remembered that. So one of the things that will happen is Dr. Q will end his term, his grace year, before then, and he has to either be an active member on a member board for NCWS or an emeritus member for our board with NCWS. So What we want to do is have this board, if this board would like to nominate Dr. Q as emeritus member of NCAAS for the California Board. And then if they take that action, then I'll write a letter to, I'll work with the president to write a letter to go to NCAAS. So at the next Board of Directors meeting, they can accept him.
Well, yes, Mr. Rufino?
I was going to ask, Madam President, do we need a motion for that? If we do, I move. I so moved.
A second.
Somebody second?
You can take it.
You can.
Yes.
I second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All those.
Wait, before you ask for any discussion and ask public comment.
Is there a discussion on, does anybody have any comments on that? Oh, Dr. Q.
Actually, I just wanted to clarify one thing. When you do write the letter, you may want to make it contingent on the emeritus member status starting at the end of my term, because I don't think I can become an emeritus member until I actually.
Yeah, that's what's in the letter I have.
Okay.
So, but I'll work with you and we'll make sure.
That's fine. No, I figured you had that covered. I was just making sure.
No, it's a good reminder.
Any other comments from the board members here? Betsy, do you have any comments or questions?
Thank you.
Okay. Any public comment on WebEx?
We are open for public comment on the motion. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the motion?
Yes, thank you. And there are no public comments here in the hearing room. So with that, we'll open it up to a vote.
President D'Antonio?
Yes.
Vice President Hartley? Dr. Amistad?
Yes.
Dr. Asghari?
Yes.
Ms. Irish?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Ms. Matheson?
Yes.
Mr. Novak?
Yes.
Dr. Qureshi?
Yes.
Mr. Rufino?
Enthusiastically, yes.
Mr. Sanchez?
Yes.
Ms. Wong?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Yay.
I'm surprised you didn't say no. So that was the easy one. So the next one, if this board remembers, we have our annual zone meeting, interim meeting in the spring each year. This one is the all-zone meeting where all 4 zones are meeting together. Did I say that right, all-zone meeting?
Yeah, I think it's all zone or all zones, I can't remember.
And it's April 27th through 29th, 2023 in Houston, Texas. We also were not approved to travel to this out of state because Texas is on the Attorney General's banned list. However, we always select board delegates should something change between now and then so that we're ready, so I can let NCAAS know should we appear, these will be our voting delegates. So what I'm asking the board to do is we need up to 3 board-approved delegates to represent this board should we be able to attend that meeting.
I volunteer to go if there's room.
Mr. Rufino, do you want to?
No, I'm not volunteering. I was going to ask the officers if you guys are available and interested. And the Vice President is, Madam President, are you available and interested? I would love to nominate.
I think if I were to take off any more time from work, I'd be fired. But he's already offered, so.
Well, you need up to 3 people.
Right. Anybody else volunteer?
I would love to go, but I'll be rolling into my last year on the board, and I could be cut at any time. So, but my enthusiasm for participating is very high. I just not sure.
Okay.
But if I'm around and there's no one, then you can.
All right.
So just to let everyone know, I need to let NCAAS know who they are by January 17th.
Oh, then.
And it's very soon after letting them know, you'll receive an email for registration. At that point, you can say no or yes, depending if something's changed that allows us to travel or not.
Okay.
So if you don't get the 3 names right now, we have until January 17th?
We will not meet again before.
They'd have to email. Oh, but we
Right.
need to vote on it.
You don't need to vote on it. Well, yes, you do need to vote on it. You need to choose who they are and vote on it.
What about Dr. Ascari?
I'm also found.
Microphone, please. We're recording this.
I'm out of country on April 27 to 29, so I cannot participate, even though I'm interested. Thank you.
Anybody else want to?
I was just going to mention that in previous years, when we've had not enough board members who want to go, we do consider associate members, such as Nancy or one of the other staff, if they were interested, so.
That's a good point. So we do have some staff members, associate member. I don't count in this regard because there's separate funding for the member board administrator if I was able to go. But Nancy, Tiffany, all of our managers, and also our registrars, our engineers, and the Lance Fair registrars are associate members.
I mean, since we're not getting any other board members, I would recommend that our associate board members throw in their names.
Okay, so it sounds like we have Mike committed right now, right?
Looks like it, yeah.
I'm going to commit you, Mike.
If they'll come and take them away, yeah, we can have it official, no?
You know Dallas wants to go to Dallas. Or it's just right around the corner.
Dallas wants to go to Houston. So then what we'll do is we'll work with staff to see who's available and should we be able to be allowed to go. Thank you. And you'll have to vote for Mike.
I move.
I second it. Okay, okay. Although, do we have to take a vote? Okay. We have a first and a second.
Probably should ask for public comment first, I'm sorry.
Okay, any public comment on WebEx?
We are open for public comment on the motion. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment.
Can I just get confirmation as to who moved and who seconded?
Kobe moved and Kathy seconded.
Thank you.
I thought it was Frank too, but maybe Kobe said something as well. So
Kobe's the senior, Kobe's the senior, and so out of respect.
That may be the case, but I'll still defer to Frank.
Thank you, Mr. King.
There are currently no requests for public comment at the moment.
Thank you. And there are no public comments here in the hearing room, so we can do a vote.
President D'Antonio?
Yes.
Vice President Hartley?
Yes.
Dr. Amistad?
Yes.
Dr. Ascari?
Yes.
Ms. Irish?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Ms. Matheson?
Yes.
Mr. Novak?
Yes.
Dr. Qureshi? Mr. Rufino?
Yes.
Mr. Sanchez?
Yes.
Ms. Wong?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, and if the board is okay with it, we'll switch back to Larry and examinations. So hope it's not whiplash here.
Apparently, I'm the designated troublemaker in this meeting. Apologies, my computer went down, so I had to come back up. I wanted to move on to the second and third points of the agenda for exams, and that has to do with seeking approval from the board on our new test plan areas for the 2 state-specific civil exams, seismic principles and engineering surveying. The new test plan starts on page 43 of the meeting materials. And Earlier this year, when we began, this test plan is the result of an occupational analysis that we have done over the last 6 months in concert with Prometric. And when we began the occupational analysis for these programs, Prometric was available over WebEx, much as they are today, to help explain the process and answer any questions. And now that we're at the end, I am happy that Prometric's here again if there's any questions on this end of the process. And I want to take just a minute to introduce who we have here from Prometric. Julie Morby is the Assessment Program Manager in Test Development Solutions. And Ebony Broussard is our Client Success Manager, and Colvin Franklin is the Assessment Design Specialist. Once approval of this test plan is granted, it'll be effective January 1st of 2024. Coinciding with this new test plan, the most recent 2022 building code will also take effect on the exams effective January 1st, 2024. So at this point, I wanted to see if anybody had any questions about the test plan.
Are we talking specifically about the seismic first or both at the same time?
It doesn't matter to me, whichever one you have a question about.
It's a curiosity, I think, more than anything, but I'm curious, what sorts of people, what sort of licensees help formulate the job analysis, the test plan, what have you, for the civil engineering surveyor's exam?
A very diverse group.
Is it all civil engineers?
I'll let Larry answer that.
Okay.
Yes, it would have to be civil engineers, but I'll let Larry go further.
It is civil engineers for the sake of it being the engineering surveying exam for civils, yes.
Any other questions?
This is Betsy. I have one of my standard editorial comments on the seismic portion on PDF page 44.
Okay.
Roman numeral 5, seismic forces, non-building structures. That's one way to spell non-building, but the other way appears in the next white bar down below. C, D, and E, there's no hyphen in non-building. I'll go back to sleep.
We can make that consistent, at least.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
It does not look like there are any other questions on our end.
Larry, do you have anything more you or Prometric staff would like to mention before we go to public comment on this?
This is all that I had for this meeting.
Oh.
So
Okay.
if there's any other questions that pop up, that would be great. Otherwise, that's all I have.
Thank you
Okay.
all for being here to answer our numerous questions. And Larry, thank you for coordinating it. And most of all, thank you for preparing it.
All right, we're going to do public comment on WebEx.
We are open for public comment on agenda item 9, WebEx. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the agenda?
Yes, thank you. And there are no public comments here in the hearing room.
So you can take the vote now, unless there's any more discussion.
Oh. Okay, so we're taking a vote.
We need a motion, I think, first.
Oh, I thought you took the motion, I'm sorry.
I don't think we have a motion,
we
so I
didn't.
will move to adopt the test plans for both seismic and surveying.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Let's go ahead. Unless there's any other discussion, we can do a vote.
Hi. Now that you have an action for the board on the table, this motion, you need to go back into public comment.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
All right. Public comment on WebEx for the motion on the table.
We are open for public comment. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to give you a few seconds to respond. And seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the motion?
Yes, thank you. And there are no public comments here in the hearing room. So now we can go for a vote.
President D'Antonio?
Yes.
Vice President Hartley?
Yes.
Dr. Amistad?
Yes.
Dr. Asghari?
Yes.
Ms. Irish? Mr. King?
Yes.
Ms. Matheson?
Yes.
Mr. Novak?
Yes.
Dr. Qureshi?
Yes.
Mr. Rufino?
Aye.
Mr. Sanchez?
Yes.
Ms. Wong?
Yes.
Motion carried.
All right, thank you, and I would also like to thank Julie and Julie, Ebony, and Colvin for being here.
Thank you all.
Okay, back to our regularly scheduled executive officer report. We're going to continue with the outreach report. It's on page 54, begins on page 54, and actually it's only on page 54. And this represents outreach from July, August, and September of this year. Typically a slow period of time, especially with schools. They're either not in school or they're just coming back to school and have other things on their mind. Any questions on the outreach report? Then I would recommend you seek public comment.
All right, are there any public comments on WebEx?
We are now taking public comment on the outreach report. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand. We will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the agenda?
Yes, thank you. And there are no public comments here in the hearing room.
Okay, continuing on to strategic plan discussion on begins on page 55. So at our October meeting, the board requested that we revisit the most recently adopted mission, vision, and value statement and for our strategic plan. So we included the excerpt about that on page 55, along with a recent governor's executive order following that in the pages, where we recommend as staff, we recommend that in this discussion that the board consider the governor's executive order more specifically. Hang on, I'm going to get to it here. I'm scrolling. On the bottom, near about the middle of page 58, where it says, it begins with, it is hereby ordered that, number one, all agencies and departments subject to my authority shall, for any strategic plans applicable during the years that we're talking, Develop or update the plan to reflect the use of data analysis and inclusive practices to more effectively advance equity and to respond to identified disparities with changes to organizations' mission, vision, goals, data tools, and so on.
Where are you, Rick?
On
Page 58.
near the bottom of page 58.
Right after it says it is hereby.
I ordered that.
Item number 1.
So I just, this is something that came out of an executive order recently that in the discussion with your strategic plan, which you knew about when you discussed your strategic plan, but we just wanted to remind you.
I didn't hear what you said.
So we talked about this, or we knew about this when we were doing our strategic plan, but we wanted to remind you to keep this in mind when you're discussing the specific topics. So have this in mind about the governor's order. We thought it was pertinent to the discussion for the mission, vision, and values. Go for it.
Yeah.
Mike, I believe it was you that brought it up that you wanted to talk about.
Well, I did. So, I'm not sure.
Basically, whenever any of you will request to revisit a topic for the strategic plan for those 3 years, we'll bring up this executive order just to remind you guys to take it into consideration if it's applicable in this case. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I haven't read through all of the, clearly all of the order, let alone, nor this particular one, so I was gonna read it. Want to take this up at the next meeting? Well, let me just mention why I brought it
Can I
up.
mention something first?
Sure.
I just wanted to clarify that the governor's executive order actually came out after the board had adopted its strategic plan. The board had already included some elements of diversity, equity, and inclusion in its strategic plan, including equity as one of the values. The board had quite a discussion about that during the development of the strategic plan. Some of the objectives and the goals relate to trying to create a more diverse population for applicants and licensees to benefit consumers in California. So, you know, unbeknownst to us that the governor was going to issue the executive order, the board did actually discuss and take into consideration DEI issues in developing their strategic plan. But we wanted you to be aware of this strategic plan and that, you know, those issues do need to be addressed in a strategic plan.
Thank you for reminding me about that. For some reason, I thought that came out before we finalized our strategic plan, but it was after. Thank you, Nancy.
Well, we did make a few changes to the objectives unrelated to it. And I think that's kind of the timing of things.
Okay.
Well, if I may, the reason that I even brought it up in October, and I was part of the discussion, I believe, about the core values and whatnot. I was sitting at a dining room table in Oregon. My dad was dying, so I don't really remember a whole lot about that meeting. I'm really looking for information about, not information, I'm looking for confirmation that as a board, if one of our core values is equity, it would seem to me that that may limit our ability to be discretionary in the way we do business and the way we act and behave with other people. Considering that equality and equity are not the same thing, in simple terms, the way I look at it, equality is treating people the same way. And I absolutely think that that's appropriate and fair, and fairness is another one of our core values. But equity is more about equal outcome, and I don't know that we can necessarily state that or want to make that our core value when it seems to me there are going to be times when our decisions are going to not allow for equity. So I just wanted to mention that, see if there was any concern from anyone else.
I mean, so I'll get to you, Mr. Sanchez. I mean, I would say that equity would be in the way the outcome that we're trying to achieve is protecting, you know, the health, safety, and welfare of the public. So whatever, I mean, we wouldn't even need to have a name associated with the case. We could just we could consider the facts and with the focus on protecting the health, safety, and welfare of the public. So the equity part would be in arriving at that fair decision based on no other basis except for the facts. That would be how I would respond to you, but I know, Mr. Sanchez, you had your hand up.
Yeah, we're actually, in my job, kind of going through a whole DEI effort, and equity is a hard term to really explain, and I'm not going to do it justice. I don't think that equal outcomes is accurate. It's going to be hard for us, I think, as a group to understand some of these efforts without a little bit of, I don't know if training is the right word, but some sort of introduction into like what the real goals are from somebody who's an expert in the field. And I've had the benefit of hearing that sort of conversation. But it's, you know, that's something that we'd have to like be willing to spend a couple hours sitting through. I found it really educational for myself to kind of learn what things we can do that are fair to advance, you know, equity across all. There's a lot of axes to look at. So maybe it might be worthwhile for us to consider some sort of opportunity to do that with this group. I don't know if the board staff has ever gone through anything like that. Because it's a philosophical thing that's kind of hard to, like, you can't really distill it down to like a sound bite, and so you kind of really have to have an honest conversation about it, and that's more of a commitment that we can kind of do in the context of a agenda item in a meeting.
Fair enough. One of the things that we did as a company was about a year and a half ago, we went through and we made a determination about what makes us tick as a company, and those are our core values. I mean, it is fundamentally who we are as an organization, and we measure people against those core values now. Does this candidate for hire share our core values? So just with that kind of mindset, this is not individual values that we hold. This is as a group, as a board, this is what makes us tick. This is what we're fundamentally about, and we operate this way. And if someone says, well, that decision that you made, was it equitable? I mean, that's a fair question. If this is our core values, that's a fair question for somebody to ask. And if we can confidently say that that's a core value that we as a board, I just raised the question.
Sorry, I'm talking. Kobe asked me if I remember who the trainer is. There's somebody on my team who happens to professionally do this for companies and for, I think he does it for state and other government things in California, but he just happens to be also a volunteer on my team that had time to brief us on it.
Yeah, there's a guy in LA named Justin Grooms who I've heard really good things about. I haven't participated in the training yet, but I've heard he's really, really good, if we wanted to do something like that.
Yes. There. I would endorse Wilfredo's idea, because I think DEI has almost become a punchline. People hear it, but they don't really understand what it could mean, and particularly what it could mean for them in their organization, with them in terms of how they navigate society these days. So I would definitely like to see something on the agenda much like the time that we spend with our strategic plan. If we've put it in the plan, it might be worthwhile examining what it means in the plan vis-a-vis what we discover we want it to mean in actual practice going forward as a board.
Okay.
It sounded to me like, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, but it sounded to me like you were wondering if the term equity was the right word versus equality.
That's one of my questions, yeah.
That's one of your questions, okay.
This is Betsy. We talked about the core values for the strategic plan in 2 different meetings last year. Well, second one, the big one was in January of this year. And I remember in the first one spending a lot of time on the difference between equality and equity and which one we wanted in our strategic plan. And I don't remember the subtleties of the discussion, but I do know that we considered it without the benefit of a rigorous training session. I guess rigorous is probably the wrong word, kind of an introductory training session on the topic. And I really like the idea of such a training session.
I mean, I guess I would say that right now, we are exercising equity in the sense that we have certain criteria we use for military who happen to be out of the country. And there are certain things that we do to accommodate them. So that would be a form of us treating that sector in an equitable manner.
I think that's a very good example. I think another good example is we have many of our applicants and licensees are out of the country, represent many other countries. And our laws, which as board staff we follow, in working with our applications and licensure, we don't treat out-of-country or out-of-state applicants any different than we do regular applicants. We try to treat everybody exactly the same, equally.
Isn't that equality?
I couldn't tell you the difference between equality and equity. I'm thinking of it now because you brought it up. And I remembered a little bit of the discussion from the strategic plan. To me, I think of treating everybody equally the same. That's how I think. Doesn't mean it's accurate.
Yeah, I think we'd benefit quite a bit from somebody who really knows the field. Equity is a bit more about fairness than equal. And just to use an example that's in my world, like, it's really hard for me to spell my name properly in government forms because there's an accent over one of the letters in my name. And my last name actually has 2 parts. It's one part from my dad, one part from my mom. And my driver's license only shows one part. I couldn't get a passport. Like, it's just, that's equity. Like, it's equal. Everybody gets to spell their name without spaces. But, it's not necessarily, if you're coming from a different background, like, it kind of doesn't feel right. So it's stuff like that where, like, we could reduce barriers to friction. Just the fact that your home language is different or your background is different, that we can fix to make your life not harder than everyone else's. And that's sort of the built-in stuff that it's an assumption somebody made a long time ago that names are always these letters and formed in this way. And I mean, and then you get into, like, sometimes names are backwards and it's hard. It's a hard thing to do, but, like, it's built into everything. So stuff like that we can consider in our process. I'm sure we could find things if we looked.
That really helped to clarify for me, that example. Thank you. That's a good example for me. One thing I would suggest, regardless of where the board ends up with the discussion, that I would suggest is, as board staff, we could reach out to DCA Solid to see if there's any training available that we could have, both for staff and maybe at an open meeting for the board, and see if we can come up with something and report back on that in the future to see what we want to do.
Public comment? Anybody else have any other comments? Okay, so we'll go to public comments on WebEx.
We are once again open for public comment. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the agenda?
Yes, thank you. And we actually have a public comment here in the hearing room.
Hi, everyone. Yvonne Durantes-Stiles here again. So as I mentioned, the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee will be meeting again in January. And this has actually been a topic that I've heard in terms of the distinction of terminology and definitions and whatnot. And obviously, everyone's, cognizant of it and trying to include it in plans and stuff. So I do know that there is current development of definitions and terms, and they will be socialized. So I just wanted to comment on that and make sure you are aware that that will become available sometime in the next quarter. So just wanted to make you aware of that.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I'm hoping that'll be helpful.
Thank you, yes.
Thank you, Yvonne, I appreciate that. You think there's a possibility in the future that maybe members from that committee could do a presentation?
I will pass it along to the committee.
I mean, they're probably my counterparts, and they're probably cursing me right now, but that could be interesting.
No, I'm sure that's part of the intent, obviously.
Okay.
And, the January meeting will be very fruitful, given that it's kind of like the second meeting. The meeting that happened in November was the kickoff meeting, but this next one will be a bit more substantial.
Great, thank you very much, appreciate it.
So we are not taking action? Because I read it that it says the review of the strategic plan and possible action. So
if you have made any kind of decisions on where we go forward, or if you need to take action, you take action. If you don't take action, then you don't need to take a vote and take action.
Well, I mean, what I heard you say was that you're going to look into getting additional information for us and possibly having another presentation.
That's true, but that wouldn't require board action.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, okay. All right, good. Okay, so moving on to item 11, the President's Report or Board Member Activities. I personally do not have anything to report under this item. Does any board member have anything that they'd like to share with regards to their activities since the last meeting?
I was in another NCS EPE meeting, and there was discussion of the structural engineering exam before. For each section, we had 5 years if you pass one section to pass another one. And now there are 4 sections. So there is a lot of discussion that do you need to have a time contingency when you pass 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. We recommended to keep that 5 years if you pass the first one.
So really, your board member activity is you really just attended this committee meeting and had discussion on the proposed structural exam, right?
Yes.
You shouldn't go into much more detail because it's not on the agenda.
Okay.
Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off. I kind of did, but I didn't.
You did. It sounds almost as scintillating as my NCES bylaws committee that I attended recently.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Do we need to do public comment? Betsy, do you have anything to add on this item?
I just wanted to circle back to something Mike mentioned on the strategic plan about apparently the recent death of his father. We breezed right over that with our discussion about terminology. So I wanted to express my condolences. That's a non-board activity you apparently participated in, Mike.
Thank you, Betsy. I do have one thing to add, Rosanna. I was encouraged when attending the annual NCWS meeting to get involved and volunteer for committees. And so I did, and I was selected to be on the MBA, Member member board administrators committee. And our first in-person meeting will be in South Carolina in January, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Oh, great. Wonderful. Good to hear. Thanks, Mike.
You may regret that.
Because it's winter?
Among other reasons, yes.
Okay, so we're going to do public comment on WebEx for this item.
We are now open for public comment on agenda item 11. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand. We will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, would you like to return to the agenda?
Yes, thank you. And there are no public comments here in the hearing room. Okay, moving on to item 12, approval of meeting minutes. Is there any discussion with regards to that?
Move approval.
Do we have a second?
Second from Betsy.
Thank you, Betsy. Do I need to do public comment here, Rick?
For which one? I'm sorry. Minutes? Yes, you definitely need public comment for minutes.
Okay. So public comment on WebEx.
We are now open for public comment on the meeting minutes. If you would like to make a comment on the motion, please type the word comment in the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand. We will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, would you like to return to the motion?
Yes, thank you. And there are no public comments here in the hearing room, so we can do a vote.
President D'Antonio?
Yes.
Vice President Hartley?
Yes.
Dr. Amistad?
Yes.
Dr. Asghari?
Yes.
Ms. Irish?
Abstain.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Ms. Matheson?
Yes.
Mr. Novak?
Abstain.
Dr. Qureshi?
Yes.
Mr. Rufino?
Abstain.
Mr. Sanchez?
Yes.
Ms. Wong?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, moving on to item number 13, discussion regarding proposed agenda items for next board meeting. Does anybody have something they'd like to propose for the next board meeting? I do. Okay, so we're just talking about the strategic plan a little while ago. That's one of our biggest accomplishments this year. One of the items in our strategic plan under Goal 1, licensing, objective 1.3, is to develop a strategy to implement a continuing education requirement to help licensees maintain and improve their professional knowledge and awareness of new pertinent laws. So despite some of the issues that you brought up, Rick, in ASBOG, I guess, with having licensees drop off due to continued education requirements, I would like to add an item on next meeting's agenda where we would create a committee that would explore the feasibility of a continued education component to the licensing.
Rick, is that something that TAC would do?
Not at this stage, no. So what I heard is I may ask you to repeat what you said, but it sounds like we need to explore the feasibility of doing this, not say we want to do it. That's what I hear, explore the feasibility of looking into it, or a strategy to look into it. I think we need to have a discussion as a board first.
Okay.
To just even explore what we want to do as a board if we want to do anything as a board. Whether or not that would ever go to attack or not depends on how that discussion ensues. And my experiences with discussions of this type is this is probably a multi-year discussion.
Understood.
So yeah, we definitely can put that on the agenda for the board to begin discussion of that objective.
Is there any comments or?
Yeah, could staff do a little research on how, where such requirements are in place around the country?
I would say that, so that we're not getting too much in depth into a topic that's not on the agenda yet, that staff would have some preliminary information available, knowing what the content is at this point.
Okay.
Any other comments or any other suggestions for agenda items? Betsy, do you have anything to add?
No, thank you for asking, and thanks for running a good meeting.
Okay. Do I need?
Normally, we do not do public comment on this, but given the subject matter,
Okay.
I would ask for public comment.
Okay, so public comment on WebEx.
We are open for public comment on proposed agenda items. If you would like to make a public comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand. We will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the agenda?
Yes, thank you, and there are no public comments here in the hearing room. So with that, we are adjourned.
You all very much impressed me that you got this done in one day.
Me too.
I have my doubts.
Oh, man, me too.
Who's in for dinner? So we can get a head count and find a place. We have former board members Eric Johnson and Pat Tammy most likely joining us as well, so I need to let them know where. I believe I've got a good count on this